2026 meeting of the Lynn Lincoln
Sorry.
Education Service District Board of Directors. And we'll go ahead and we don't have anyone virtual, right? Everyone's in person.
No.
All right, we'll just go ahead and start with introductions, starting with you, Vince, and then we'll just work our way around.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vince Adams. I'm a board development specialist with the Oregon School Boards Association.
Lisa Shea, Executive Assistant, Board Secretary, Assistant Superintendent.
Hi, I'm Janae Susan, not bench, her pronouns, Board Director, so four.
Miriam Cummins, she, her, area, Board Director for Zone 6.
I'm Amy Vetter, she, her, Board Director for Zone 5.
Jason Hay, Superintendent. Eddie Symington, Zone 7 Board of Directors.
Lori Greenfield, Zone 2 Board of Directors.
Bill Hayes, Zone 1 Board of Directors.
Ira Bear, Cybersecurity Technician.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and so I will hand the floor over to you, Vince.
Thank you, Chairman. Better.
Better, yes, it's a weird
Better.
name.
I would say vector.
I get it
Which-
all the time. It is the closest word.
It's your superpower name.
I thought you just vetted things for them.
Yes, and my husband's a veteran, so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me again. I wish this was more. No, I'm not gonna make any apologies. This is a riveting presentation. You're going to be at the edge of your seat the whole time. Are you so pumped up for finance and ethics? And you know, ethics is so exciting that we're gonna do it first. So I had a
Kick
great
it off right.
So the superintendent and I had a really nice conversation talking about where does the board need to go and just really channeling your needs and just really continuing to level set and really just use this year to just provide the board with some foundational information so that you have a strong place to grow from. Because you have some new folks on the board, new people that are attending our level up, our new board member cohort. Thank you for making that investment. And thank you for helping us learn how to do that. We're really excited about that. So we'll just dive in here. I don't think I put an agenda slide on here. Here I am, number 11, LBLESD. And I just wanted to recap. You might remember we talked about the leadership team last time, right? So hopefully this diagram, you remember that we have a board that provides authority, direction, and oversight of the district, right? Should be resonating here. We got a superintendent who's providing operational leadership, expertise, and a special kind of expertise when we're talking about ESDs, because that's not like a school district. You know, he has to live in kind of two worlds where he has to have this education brain, but a really heavy operational brain as well, because you're providing services out into your member districts. But he's taking your direction and turning it into action. And then, of course, you have your administrative professional who's also part of your leadership team, because governing boards float on oceans of paper. More and more that's virtual paper, but still, I mean, but governance requires coordination. And of course, they're often the person who keeps us safe so that as lay board members, we're not violating the law, and they provide continuity. So they've often been in the position for a while. Knows where the bodies are heading. May have put some of those bodies there. Watch out for them, they're dangerous.
Keeps the superintendent on track.
But at these junctions, we have key features of the leadership team. Overall district leadership comes from that relationship between the board and the superintendent. Governing body operations is the secretary and the board. She's your key support to help you be ready when you show up in the room to do your work. And then for those who are in the administrative professionals that are in that split position where they're the board secretary and the executive assistant, it's very common here in Oregon. They're providing that support for that superintendent because superintendents are decision makers. They're very busy. They need to be out engaging people, learning, and then making all those operational choices. Okay, and they need to know where they need to be and when they need to be there. And that's why they need executive assistants. Critical that all three components are operating well for board or district leadership, whatever that district is, to be functioning. So, leadership act, efficacy. This is a causal chain. Now, this is a little more disconnected from you folks because you're in ESD. Nevertheless, I bet it still hasn't been done, but I'm sure it still holds true that the way you function as board members, as you show up as individuals, impacts your board culture, how your board functions, and that finds its way into your organizational culture. And ultimately, that finds its way to students. And so where we see organizations where their governing body is struggling, then we see dysfunction, and that has impacts downstream. So we'll put into this slide.
Vince, I think one thing, if you ever wanted to do an ESD version of this,
Yeah,
if you inserted another icon between organizational culture and classroom instruction and just called it service to school districts in between,
yep,
you would have the ESD change.
yep.
You know, that like we do have that downstream impact on students and classroom instruction, but we do it through service to districts and district staff.
Yeah, and then now that I'm starting to think about it, as I look at the scale size of the district served, the more and more that magnitude, that's what you put in here, the more important that variable becomes. So if you think about ALSI, so crucially important having that support in ESD, that's a really big factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, so sometimes it's, you know, just that like we're providing to the districts and district staff that then impact classroom instruction and students. And then sometimes with the students that we directly serve, it actually is exactly that because EIECSE, we're serving families. You could say classroom instruction / families. And then students, long-term care and treatment would be that exact one that we have, just like we're a school district. So it just depends on what services we're talking about.
yep,
Quick question,
Yeah.
would you be able to send us this slideshow?
of course.
Fantastic.
I actually have to. Because
Good.
the document being shared with the board, so it's part of the public record. So, yeah, I have to send it to you. All right. So before I move on, there's one other thing, and this is the actual fun part. Is that we wanted to reserve some time to talk about meeting structure. Hopefully we'll have plenty of time, unless you guys really want to chat about ethics, and I'm totally spend the whole night talking about ethics. But yeah, we reserve some time for that at the end. And I have a really cool activity to help us with that. Okay, so you remember this analogy, remembering that imagining the district as a ship and that our ship has a captain who's in charge of all the operations to make the ship go and be safe and a fun place to be. And as the board, we commission the journey. Now, with an ESD, defining success is a little bit different than the school district. You know, you're defining, can we provide these services in a way that's efficient and effective and that has impact on kids? But you're still commissioning that journey. The destination is just a little bit different than a school district. Okay, you set the destination, you identify the intermediate goals, those ports of call, and at all times you're relying on your maritime professional, rather your education and operational professional. You might remember this slide that we thought about this as from an aviation standpoint. Getting blank stares. You guys don't remember this slide? When was the last time you climbed into the cockpit and told the pilot how to fly the plane? You didn't. They locked the door. It's a trick question, right? Okay, so we don't do that in our education service districts But I mean, what your superintendent and the team is doing is technical in nature. K-12 education now, public education, is an evidence-based endeavor. We know we have a pretty deep understanding of child development and how children learn. And education has been professionalizing for what, 60 years now? Yet nevertheless, we still hire people like me who have no education in education. I have no education in pedagogy or school administration. So I have to rely on my education professional to help me understand and do this. Now, when you took a flight, that doesn't mean that we don't have expectations. If I get a plane ticket to Honolulu because I'm going on vacation, I definitely want to land in Honolulu, right? I don't want to go to Waukegan, Illinois. Okay, so I have expectations of what the outcome will be. And if you fly some airlines, they have that cool data dashboard on the back of the seat in front of you that gives you your altitude and time to destination. They give you tracking data. Well, we do that in ESDs and school districts too. We track our students, we track our performance. We call them KPIs, key performance indicators, right? Same sort of thing. And when you step off the plane, and I know you guys have seen the pilot is standing there looking all cool. Because they always do. They're always like, yeah, that was great. And you always say, hey, nice landing. That was great. That's evaluation, right? Or if you came down in a thunderstorm, you're like, thanks for getting us on the ground alive. We evaluate. So it's another lens to think about our role as board members. This will be helpful later when we start thinking about finance. And what is our role about finance? Because resource allocation is crucially important. And we also have an evaluative role. We have an oversight role there. And so we are going to be, evaluating resource allocation and tracking progress and things like that. So all these things hold true. What else do I have? High performing boards. I don't want to belabor this because I really want to get to the really exciting ethics stuff. But this is just a refresher from last time. So this is just showing that we have research on what high performing boards do. And what's really amazing about this works totally fine with ESDs. This also works totally fine with if you're on a nonprofit board, it holds true. So if we do these things, if we focus on a vision of what's possible for students and for our district and key goals that we're going to aim at, it's going to make a difference for the kids in our region. Okay. We're setting clear expectations, a vision of high expectations. Do you have low expectations for the students in our region? Of course you don't. Okay. Climate and resources, building the conditions for success, creating a sense of urgency for this vision, of high expectations, and aligning and sustaining resources. Talk about those resources a little bit later. Data and monitoring, that's how we hold the system accountable. But also remember, we commission the journey, right? We're saying, Captain Hay, take us to the island of student success paradise where every student in our region, graduates with a plan for post-secondary success. Okay?
And it snows every day and everyone knows how to ski.
But it's an audacious goal, but we want to have high expectations. But how do we know we're getting there? Well, data is how we read the map. How we navigate to that destination. Are we heading in the direction that we want? And for you guys, data is also going to be data that you're going to get, input that you're going to get from your constituent districts. Are you providing the services that they need so that they can be successful? What do they need? So it's a little more complex, a little more nuanced. Cohesive teaming is just an academic term for what the board is doing right now. You're learning together as a board team. You're practicing unified governance, creating shared understanding and beliefs. Community engagement, a little bit different. I think who said it in the training today that ESDs sit behind a curtain. That was Bill. Yeah, you do. You're not quite as front row center to the controversies of K-12 education as your district partners. But you're still connected to that,
Yeah.
and your community is different. Your community is your constituent districts, those superintendents, those boards, and those educators there that rely on it. Okay? Policy and accountability, critically important. It's essential to what we do because this is how we operationalize our governance. You meet maybe once, twice a month. One a month. So for the intervening 29 days, the superintendent needs to know what you expect. And so, you know, our expectations, the policies are a message in a bottle to our superintendent so that they know what we need. Okay, so this is what the research says high performing boards are focusing their attention on, these activities. We could flip the script here. Oh, no, I didn't put the negative one. Good. It was a good overview. Focus on the positive. But just separating governance from management, these are different activities. I mean, we're adopting policy, the superintendent's developing rules and operational language. Your team is going to roll up their expenditures and look at the revenue. They're going to write a budget document for it. You're going to adopt it. You're going to examine it. We'll talk about the budget process here in a while. Curriculum or program recommendations, you're approving them. You're exercising their authority to approve those. But they're going to make that recommendation because they're the experts, right? But they have to convince us. Both sides have community engagement, although I'm not as familiar with community engagement. I know you definitely need to engage districts on what their needs are for the service plan and things like that. School districts have some statutorily required community engagement that has to happen. So there's lots of, just looks different on which side of the equation that you're on. And this side is going to look different for you folks because you're not probably typically meeting with parents that are being served or guardians or families, things like that. Key difference here is that school board, we're staying in informed oversight. We're monitoring progress over here. Our superintendent and team are bringing information into this room. So we stay in that informed oversight state. Just detailing this governance versus management role. It'll make more sense when we talk about finance.
Hey, Vince, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible, or is this something that the OSBA have considered about creating a presentation like this, but tailored to ESD specifically? Because I feel like sometimes the information that we receive is very K-12, which is great. That's also good for us to know. But for us to, I feel, to gain a good sense of what we can do as a board, as an ESD, having that specific training. And I don't know if this is something that OSBA has thought about, collaborating with other ESDs to gain data. I'm all for data. I'm a Virgo. I'm all data driven. So to create a training that is more specific and tailored to our needs.
You'll see that roll out next year.
Next year? Okay.
It's happening right now.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
I'd be curious, when I ran, I was hoping to be more connected with my constituency to say, hey, this is a great thing that's happening, you need to know about it. And I introduced myself at school board meetings for my zone. But beyond that, across Oregon, if there's things that you folks could compile from OSBA about what people are doing on ESDs to engage their community.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We'll have to, because I mean, we'll have to teach on the 12 standards of balanced governance, and community engagement is one of those. So yeah, we'll have to teach on that. But yes, the answer is yes, we are. Mark Mulvihill, who's the superintendent out at Intermountain ESD, is a contract trainer for us and is helping us a lot with that stuff. There's a couple other folks that are coming alongside to support us in doing that.
Okay, that was.
So we are.
Is that also, are you guys also collaborating with OA ESD, or is it only going to be specifically OSBA?
Yeah.
You only.
I mean, we wouldn't not. Yeah, we wouldn't exclude.
Okay.
But we know historically OSBA has not served ESDs well. So we're also we've rebuilt our superintendent search process to accommodate ESDs, because that's different.
Yeah.
It looks, feels, works different. Yeah.
Just to kind of add to what was already said, yeah, I think just in terms of community education as well, right? Because I know that I was at a forum where they were talking about kind of board members, but no one thought of yes.
Yeah.
Right, and this was it was a big, like community event. I think even now at the public library, they're doing this thing where they would invite, this is in Corvallis, where they would invite different elected people to come and talk about their roles, but ESTs were never considered.
Right.
Yeah,
Not surprised.
yeah.
Yeah.
The blessing and the
I was
curse.
gonna say, very careful, there's parts of that I'm like in behind the curtain, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
So true.
I was in a working group of two other people who were newly on school boards and they were stressed. out
Oh, yeah.
Going into firestorms. I was like, wow. That's easier.
And yeah, and there's times when it is a blessing and curse, depending, like even the legislature. There's been times when it's been really nice that the legislature has forgotten about us. With certain people that come where they'll just say school districts and we're like, okay, so do ESTs have to follow it? And I'm like, well, it doesn't say that. I'm like, okay, cool. And then there's other times where we haven't been included, where you're like, are you kidding? You know, like,
Yeah.
hey, there's a whole group of entities that are out there that, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Double-edged sword.
I was gonna editorialize there. I am not. I'm gonna follow that.
Yeah.
That's like a wonderful situation. It's like talk loud and then not talk loud. Yeah. Strategically. But yes, point well made. Thank you for the feedback. I will carry that back to the team. That,
Yeah,
because
and let's do too, so that way we can start signing up for.
so the other folks that we don't do a really great job, maybe somewhat better because Krista Miles is an expert in charter schools, but it's serving charter schools and charter districts. That's where we have some work to. Balanced governance, I don't know, I hope I didn't go into gory detail on this. Balanced governance is the way, I just showed you some research on what school boards should be doing, because that's what people analyze, they'll do ESDs. And if you go outside of Oregon, they're not called ESDs, they're called something else. So, I mean, everybody's got analogous districts, service districts all over the country, but they call them different things. Yeah. It would be nice if there was some continuity there, but anyway, this is how we organize theoretically our work. And it really focuses on, well, this key, what I've been driving at is this idea of informed oversight. We don't want to be disengaged. I mean, we trust our superintendent to do the work, but the late Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And so we have an oversight role. That's part of why you were elected. On the other side, we don't want to be micromanaging. You want to empower your team to do the work and be successful. We want to be in this state of informed oversight, where the key information, crucial information is flowing into this room. But we still ask hard questions. Hard questions is how we express our expectations and help these folks do great work. Okay. Now we're on to the really good stuff. Okay. Disclosure. All these slides were written by attorneys. So buckle up. This is really stuff.
Fun.
Okay, here we go. So, yes, you are public officials. The Legislative Assembly declares that the service as a public official is a public trust, and as one safeguard for that trust, people require all public officials to comply with ethics laws. So you are subject to ethic laws. You cannot materially benefit from your position. If there's one thing you take away from this, that's it. You cannot materially benefit from your position. Okay?
Wait, what you're saying then is we can't get a jet as a gift?
Yes.
I just
It's
want
less
to
than
make
$50,
sure.
sure.
Okay.
It's less than $50.
Yeah, okay.
It might not fly.
With that,
And-
it's all that.
And only one jet Under $50 a year, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
a year old snap, okay, well, that's ain't on to it, then.
We'll get to the financial amounts. And then I'll give you my personal advice as a person who's lived this path, how I handle that $50 limit. Okay, so who's a public official? You are. But any person serving in the state of Oregon or any of its political subdivisions or any other public body as an elected official, appointed official, employee or agent, regardless of the person, compensated, blah, blah, blah. Everybody in this room is a public official. We cannot benefit from our positions. It's part of the public trust. So what I've said twice now, they are prohibited from using our office for financial gain. I would say material gain or avoiding financial loss. Okay. So either way, that would be viewed as a financial.
Getting discounts or getting things that,
We'll get there.
yep, exactly.
Yep, it's towards the end of the slide deck. Okay.
So is
So-
it only in the state of Oregon, or is that also national, federal?
All states have some versions of these laws. I'm most familiar with those in Oregon,
Okay,
but yes, that is true. Now, it's an enforcement or complaint and enforcement system, so, yeah. I'm not gonna get into national politics.
no, I was just trying to understand, cause I'm like, well, how does that work federally then?
Yeah, don't even try to translate this there. Yeah. So conflicts of interest. So this is really about material conflict of interest. Now, your constituents, folks outside the building here, when they say they sometimes perceive these colloquial conflicts of interest that which is more aligns with hypocrisy, ideological conflicts of interest. So this comes up. What we're talking about here and what you will can actually get in legal trouble for is material conflicts of interest. That you may benefit from something or you maybe avoid some cost to you in some way. So again, it's about material benefit. Now, you can have a conflict in the sense that you may get your way on a particular vote or something like that. That's completely different. So that's a different situation. Okay, so potential conflicts of interest, you could have a financial impact, positive or negative, could happen to you. So it might happen. So, and the actual is, well, it's actual. That benefit will definitely accrue to you. And we'll go through scenarios to spell this out. Okay? So, and we'll talk about what we do in those situations. This is really important. Because it's not just about you, it's also the people around you. So relatives, and there's one important addition to this slide that's not here. And this is new from the last legislative cycle, is that people who reside with you are also included in this. So if there is a decision that can positively or impact anybody on the screen. So, and boy, there's a bunch, people in your family. So that's, spouses, parents, step parents, child, siblings, step sibling, son, daughter-in-law of the public official, spouse, parent, step parent, child, sibling, step sibling, or son, daughter-in-law of the public official's spouse. That's someone you're legally married to. Any individual for whom the public official has a legal obligation to support. So these were people who would be legal dependents of you, if you claim them on your taxes. This is the new one right here. And it wasn't true, back when I was school boarding, a person who resides with the official. So if they live in your house, they're included, okay? Any individual for whom the public official provides benefits arising from the public official's employment. Any individual for whom a public official or candidate receives benefits arising from the individual's employment. I don't even know what that means. So if anybody's around you, and so think about this very broadly, be very careful. It's rising.
That one's a little confusing.
It is a little confusing. I almost would want to get a legal opinion on this. And sometimes that's what I do. If this gets confusing, that's why we have Pace Legal, is for situations like this where we're like, oh, is this true? And you can always do that in an instance, if you get the inkling that you might be materially benefiting, pick up the phone or just shoot an email over to Pace Legal. They're there. They love answering these questions. Okay. You're always welcome to call, or you can pick up the phone and call me and I'll reach out to them. You know. So who is a relative? So it's not just you, it's also people around you. Okay, so scenario. So is this a conflict of interest? You're developing a request for proposals for roof repair or repair on the roof here, okay? And your relative owns a roofing business that will probably submit a bid. You have a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Potential conflict, well, if they don't get to it,
Oh, no, why is it potential?
because it may go to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, yes, you have a potential conflict of interest. Okay,
But also because it's a potential, or another thing that makes it potential is it also depends on the decision and how much you are a part of the decision as well. Like if you decide to vote on something versus say, I can't vote on this, yeah, then you just eliminate it. It was potential, but you eliminated action.
okay, and we'll talk about how to handle these. I just want to go through the scenarios here. So a public official takes official action could financially impact them or a relative. Boy, you can tell these are old slides. Relative or business involving public official or relative. Okay, so now board is voting on whether to approve the contract with the roofing company. Your spouse owns the roofing company. Do you have a conflict of interest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's an actual conflict. Wowzer, yes. Okay, let's see. So it takes official that would financially impact them. Okay. I know it's kind of simplistic, but this stuff does happen. It really does.
I have a question though. What if that wasn't? What if they were like divorced? Would that still be a conflict?
Yeah, maybe, particularly if they have kids.
Yep.
I'd get a legal opinion. Man, being with OSBA, I'm going to my 6th year on it with OSBA. I have become very risk averse. So yeah, just get a legal opinion. You've already paid for it. Do it.
Yeah, I would ask about that because if the kids were in a shared custody situation where the kids would benefit, then your own children in that other household would benefit. So it might be an ex, but there's still a family member of yours that would benefit from that action.
Yeah.
You still would have violated. So, yeah.
Or you're entitled to spousal support.
Yeah, there's a lot of different pieces, but yeah. Yeah.
But there could be situations where it's not a conflict of interest, right? If you were divorced, like if the kids were over a certain age and.
Yeah, I mean, if your divorced spouse, I'd still get a legal opinion.
Yeah.
Just play safe. Yeah. Don't even mess with that. And so there's another component to this. There's being legally correct, and then there's the court of public opinion.
Right.
So public trust is really important here. And they're watching, make no mistake.
And from my seat, so I've always, if there's anything that is even close, where it's like, okay, this could be, I'm not sure, even if it's gonna go and take a little trip and visit potential. And I'm not sure, I would give advice. Yeah, ahead of time.
Yeah, even if you get close.
So is that more of a monetary conflict, or is it also, for instance, gaining, okay, here's a scenario, all right? Let's say there's a school board member who has a child that it's in the school district and it's needed to get evaluated for services or something, right? Would that be considered conflict of interest? Because now you're in a position, even though you're a school board member, you're also a parent, and your child is getting potentially services in this case, because they're getting evaluated for services.
I think it really depends on how you use your position. If you're communicating appropriately within the system, that's fine. If you're abused, but I can see a scenario where a person could abuse the power of their position to advocate. Absolutely.
Where I would see is that if you as a board member, a good like thing that, not a good thing, but a way that it could happen is that if you said, you know, Jason, my child's evaluation is coming up, or, you know, it's really important that my child's evaluation happens sooner rather than later. And if there's any sort of like, hey, I want something to get put in front of the line or anything like that, then absolutely you would be using your position over somebody who is a subordinate. Then yeah, that could be a conflict. But if it's all, you're just like, you're a parent
Yes.
and you're staying out of it, like your board role is staying out of it, you're not. You're just letting the system do what the system does. It probably wouldn't.
And there's plausible scenarios where the member could even use a threat or a veiled threat in that situation where if you don't serve my child, that's going to show up in your performance evaluation.
Yeah.
That sort of thing
Yeah.
does really happen. So you don't even want to get anywhere near that. So, yeah, and it's important. I mean, that's a really salient question.
Well, I'm thinking because like I've been in situations where I do have two students that have, you know, IEPs and 504. So when I do attend these meetings, I always start with, I'm here as a parent and not as an elected official.
Yeah.
One, because I want to advocate for my kids, for them to be successful as a parent. And so that's one of the things that I'm always thinking about. I'm like, I'm not telling anyone anything or using that level of power, but I do want to advocate for my child because one, I know the resources that are available and I have questions for my child to be successful. So that's why I'm voicing that real scenario, because I know I'm not the only school board member out there that has children that is getting special education.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, how do I differentiate, you know, that from a conflict of interest and making sure I'm doing everything okay? Because I don't want to get in trouble, because I'm like, I'm a parent, like be first and foremost, you know? And so I want to make sure that I'm able to advocate for my kids.
Yeah, I think your practice is spot on. That's exactly what you should do. Self-disclosing, I'm here as a parent. And I mean, when we go into parent teacher conferences or anything like that, it's always good to get that out on the table. If you have a situation that may be tense, so I'm reminded when my oldest daughter was in middle school, had to have a conversation with a teacher and it was going to be tough. I was at 10 out of tough. So I, got on the phone with my superintendent and said, hey, Ryan, I'm going in hot. I've got a situation. I just want to let you know. Ended up being a great conversation, worked out fine. But just cultivating that trust with my administrator is important. So listen, you could do the same thing, particularly because meetings can be tough. I'm just saying, hey, it's IEP season. Just letting you know that I'm interacting with staff and some of those conversations might be challenging. I'm speaking as a mom, as a parent, not as a board member.
I haven't gone through one of these, but I've witnessed it a few different times with different board interactions, but like your example would be a good one. If you then go and you talk to Denise about this is happening and I'm frustrated and blah, 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 and then you go and you talk to Eddie and everything else, that's going to start looking like you're using your power for getting what you want by working towards a forum then to then tell the superintendent, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen board members that have done that. And then you would have a very nervous superintendent to say like, yep, oh, you're gonna try to get what you want for your kid because of your position of power. So, yeah, sort of like the decision to do certain things starts to tip at one way or the other.
Yeah, and you start to see that blurring when, with old boards that have been with each other for a long time. They've seen the good, the bad, the ugly together. And so it blurs into that friendship. We're now friends, we're, members of the same community, or we know each other. I mean, we know our kids and so you start seeing situations like that where
I
that.
can't believe this happened and
So yeah, you gotta maintain boundaries. Role clarity is where we see the most problems.
yeah. And then also like the other spot that I've seen it before is when board members don't utilize the chain of command. Going directly. It's one thing, like Vincent said, which every superintendent would appreciate. Hey, just so you know, I'm going to go and I'm going to have this meeting with the teacher. So it's not a surprise because this probably wouldn't surprise you to know, but as soon as you have a meeting, if you have a hot meeting with a parent, the superintendent's going to find out about it within minutes. Like that principal is going to say like, hey, by the way, so-and-so board member is on the board, and wondering about where it goes, but not staying in the chain of command or jumping the chain of command. Like, so like for one of you to go like, hey, I know the superintendent in that district. I'm going to go directly to the superintendent instead of like, hell, I haven't talked to the case manager yet. I haven't talked to the principal yet. That would start to look like you're using your position in a different way. Yeah.
Is it always best advice to disclose? Like disclose that you are, I mean, I asked
That's a
that.
great segue. Thank you. Oh, what happens?
I asked that though, because I was in a meeting as a parent and, there was someone who was employee, actually of the PSD. And, they were providing certain services for my kiddo, but didn't know that I was on the board, right? And I asked them a question, and in the moment that I asked the question, I thought, should I tell them, like, should I say? And I did, but I felt as though by saying that, it just changed the dynamic because instead of, I mean, it was fine, right? They were like, oh, I didn't know, and, but I felt like, wow, maybe I shouldn't have said anything because then I would have just been parent, right?
So I've struggled with the same thing. And I've always erred on the side of clarity. Just make it clear. And yeah, it's gonna be awkward for a minute when they go, oh, you're a school board member, oh my goodness. And they adjust that to that. And you just have to be normal in your normal parent self.
And tone matters.
Yes.
I could go back to times when I was a building principal where if the way that you say it and the tone is just so you know, I'm a board member, I mean, even if there's any amount of tone that's like, I am pulling a power move. Yeah, it has to be really like the tone has to be super even keel because people will pick up and say, oh, I found out they're a board member. They wanted me to know. They're in a position of power.
But Miriam modeled that really well.
Yeah.
Like here as a parent.
Yeah.
Not as a board.
Yeah, and if you do that in that really even, just caring tone, like I'm letting you know this.
Okay, so what do we do? What happens if I have a conflict of interest? So we disclose it. I'm reminded of. So we had a board member in Corvallis for a number of years and his spouse was a member of the staff. And there is a class exception. We would make decisions on collective bargaining agreements. there's an exception for that. It was not a conflict of interest. It wasn't even a potential conflict of interest. It was just looked like there could be. He always disclosed. He said, and he would say, my wife is on staff, but I feel I can be objective in considering this, And we all could nod our heads and go, okay, thank you. So he was just being abundantly careful is what he was doing. So yeah, if you get a hint that it's there and you have a group of reasonable people, you have a superintendent to help you navigate this. If you're in a conflict of interest situation, just surface it and let the group process it. If you have to take a pause and reach out to legal counsel, you can do that. But if you don't disclose, that's where you get into trouble. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking that like some of the conflict of interest that we discussed, they're kind of unreasonable, right? Where we can say, "Oh, yeah, I could see that." But then I think about like my role in terms of my career, faculty, LBCC, right? And sometimes there's an overlap between like some of the community work that I do and the ESD,
Sure.
And so, which, because it's my job, right, there's, like there's that financial piece that's there as well. And so I often wonder, like how to approach that.
So my recommendation, so if I put myself in your shoes where you're a practitioner, you're a faculty, actually I've had this come up recently with a client, she's a therapist and is actually contracts with the district and she was on the school board. And so, yeah, how do I process that? And so my advice to her was I routed her back to her superintendent. Is they're going to be your thought partner on that. They understand the contractual obligations of the district, of the operation, and they can also connect you with legal resources to help you. Ultimately, if it's complex, just get a legal opinion. Yeah, and PACE will do that for you. Well, not for free. You have a membership fee, but for free. It doesn't cost you anything. And then you're protected. Then you're acting on counsel's advice, and then they assume liability. So if it turns out, if Oregon Government Ethics Commission, we'll talk about them here in a bit, but comes back and says, oh, you were naughty, you say, oh, but I've got this email, this legal opinion that says it was okay for me to do that. And so then they'll talk to PACE. Okay, so yeah, always disclose, so potential conflict of interest following the public announcement, the public may participate in the official action on the issue that gave rise to the conflict of interest. But you may want to just let it go anyway. So there's also the court of public opinion. So, and if there's an actual conflict of interest following the public announcement, the official must refrain from further participation in the official action on the issue that gave rise to public interest. So that's participation in the action. What do we mean by action? What do you think that means?
Is it the actual vote?
It's the actual vote.
So you can participate in the process of discussing what you think would be best on the roof at the ESD, not necessarily the companies that put it in, that we want a 50-year warranty, or we want to, we can participate in all of that, but when it comes actually to vote for the company, that's where we probably want to step back.
Yep.
Okay.
But that's not my recommendation. My recommendation is that you step away. Because not only you're protecting yourself legally, but you're also protecting public trust. And this is problem unless you hold very specialized knowledge that's relevant to this topic, your board can probably survive without you. So I would recuse myself from discussion, might even leave the room, so that there could be no hint that there was any, ethical or
So trying to convince your board members even through the discussion
or raised eyebrow or whatever. You can have solid ground to say, I wasn't even in the room. They made the decision when they hired your business or whatever.
But what if let's say it's a time constraint scenario, And
Say it again.
what is that time constraint? Like, for instance, let's say there's a vote for the roof, let's just take that scenario. And there is quorum, but if that person leaves, then you don't have quorum, so you can't vote now. So what
Yeah.
happens in those situations where that day, right, that night, you have to vote in order to, because of time. But now you have to remove yourself, now you have no quorum.
Well, you would know that ahead of time.
Yeah,
and
I would say that is where your superintendent
Yeah,
would have mitigated for that well before it even got to a meeting.
Yeah, but what if some board members get sick that day off?
No, I'm not even saying like the superintendent would know that the recommendation coming before the board is going to be this roofing company, and that roofing company is your spouse. We would know that well in advance of the meeting, and it would be
Yeah.
one of those things, like if that were something that I was navigating in terms of facility thing, I would be making sure we're going to have quorum without Miriam, right? And just know that if you don't, you're gonna push it to the next meeting, I just would not,
yeah,
I would not recommend doing anything other than just totally above board, like leave the room,
yeah.
no decision.
The next step would be to postpone. And if you were like constrained by, you had to make a decision, otherwise you would lose grant funding to do the project at all. I mean, that's gonna be a vanishingly rare situation, but if that were the case, I would get on the phone with Pace Legal and say, what can we do here? They may tell you, sorry, it's not gonna happen.
Sorry,
Don't do anything illegal.
no roof.
Don't do anything illegal, and understand, we're not doing brain surgery. This is, as trainers, we tell ourselves this, we're not doing brain surgery here. No one is gonna die.
No decisions.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. Don't break the law. It's not worth it.
You could wait.
Yeah, there'll be another opportunity. Any questions about this? Disclose. When in doubt, disclose. When in doubt, get a legal opinion. It's just, it's pretty rare that this comes up, but when it does, it's usually not hard. And then goes back to the adage, never go alone. That's why we have governing boards, so we don't have to go alone. The wisdom is in the room. That's why we get groups of people. So if something like this is confusing and you're like, I don't know, ask your team, reach out to your superintendent, tap the wisdom that you have around you. Exceptions, okay. Okay, so conflict of interest arises from a membership interest in a particular business or occupation. That membership is a prerequisite for holding the public official position. I don't know. I don't even know what that would be. Financial impact of the official action would impact the public official, relative business of the public official to the same degree as other members of an identifiable group or class. It's the class exception. So it's very frequent that members on school boards have someone who is a relative on that big list of people who are in the district itself. That may be going on here. Some of you may be related to people who work for the ESD. If that were the case, I would not be surprised. It's pretty common, actually. Okay, so this usually comes up with collective bargaining agreements. Can school board members vote on a collective bargaining agreement when someone they're related to is on staff and is affected by that collective bargaining agreement? And the answer is yes, you can, because it's an identifiable group or class. So if your spouse is a teacher and you're doing the collective bargaining agreement for teachers, you can vote on that because you're making a decision for the whole class, not just your spouse. Okay? That's usually how this shows up.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jason, are there any other examples of?
No, that's the big
class
one.
exception?
Yeah, that's the big one that I've noticed for the years. I mean, and that's even one, this is where, what is allowable under the ethics law versus what is the, court of public opinion, like Vince has talked about too. If there was a quorum, I've seen plenty of board members over time just say like, I'm not voting for it, like, I'm out, I'm gonna abstain. Because if 6 of you vote yes for the CBA, that's perfectly fine. You know, it's like, if you're not needed for the quorum, then a lot of people will just not do it. So then it's completely like. Nobody can say anything like, oh, you came to, you know, this because you just wanted this for your spouse. Where people I've heard, haven't been a part of a bargaining team like this, but when there have been board members that are involved in bargaining, that can be really sticky. So there's a lot of times where board members, my recommendation, like if we ever had a situation where one of you had a family member that was a part of the licensed group and is like, oh, I'd like to be on the bargaining team, I would just like, no, that is not a good idea. So, you know, like, you should not be at the bargaining table, because then you're representing the board and you're having months-long discussions about something, and it's like.
Be given insider information.
Well, and it's just that, you know, like, you're a family member and you, by proxy, and, you know, you're potentially your checking account and people have the same checking account.
Yeah.
It's gonna gain from whatever happens at that table.
Yeah. It's just gonna create confusion. Again, role clarity. It's really, really important. Denise, you mentioned community work, and this is another exception here. So conflict of interest is from an unpaid position as an officer, member of a nonprofit, as that's tax exempt, not. Okay? So if you're doing community organizing work, stuff like that, that's unpaid, that's an exception. So even the organization can benefit so long as you're not in the paid position. Or you can be on the board, say you're on the board for an organization that's providing service for the district, but you're in an unpaid position. So that's where that usually shows up. That's okay. But if you're paid, a completely different animal. Okay, what's next? Ooh, nepotism. What fun, right? Yeah, nepotism. Yeah, so these, what you can do and what you can't do. What you can do, you can serve as a reference. You can do that. You can give letters of recommendation. You can do ministerial acts of employment. So that's the actual process of going through hiring somebody. We don't do that very often. We only do that when we're hiring a superintendent, but you can do that. What you may not do, appoint, employ, or promote somebody in the organization. You may not discharge or demote them. You cannot interview them unless it's the superintendent. But if they were your relative, yeah, that would go discuss, debate, or directly supervise. So yes, you can be a reference. So this is if they were applying for a job, yes, you can serve as a reference. You can give a letter of recommendation, and you can, if you had to create the position there, you could do the ministerial act of creating that, but you can't be involved in the actual hiring. So any of these other things, I can actually influence the. Okay, how are we doing with that? Okay.
My commentary, go back to that once, it's just, my superintendent commentary on these, just because it says you can, doesn't mean you should necessarily should. I think that's a major piece, because, in a lot of cases, if you want to hurt your family member, write them a letter of recommendation for a job where you're sitting on the board, and you will hurt them.
Yes.
I mean, there's just things that are like that, you know, it's like, you think about how it works, right? Yeah. Is that like, no, they should get a letter of recommendation from someone else.
Yes.
If they're applying for an ESD job, tell them to get a recommendation letter from someone else. So that's where just because it's allowed doesn't necessarily mean you should do that, and you actually could be hurting.
I think it's not so much about family members, but if like maybe you work with someone in another ESD and maybe they're applying for a position there.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Because you may not be cautious, but other people on the hiring committee will definitely be cautious.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yep.
You're trying to,
Actually, I had that, well, I won't go on it.
Yeah, but that's actually a really good point to be like that. I think is probably more likely to happen, you know, and then you think like, oh, is that really the right thing for them? You know, because it's a double-edged sword, like it could be positive or it might not be.
yeah, because I think about like colleagues that I have, like in EI, CSC, who might ask me to write a letter of recommendation to them, not because I'm a board
But
member.
because of your position at work.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep,
Then how is that? Yeah.
Question.
yep.
I want to keep moving because I want to get to the actual good stuff. Gifts, okay, I think they made this more difficult than it needs to be. Gifts means anything of economic value that is offered to you. Or without a cost or a discount, or is a forgiven debt. So if you were gonna have to pay that green fee, but then they comp you that green fee, or yeah, it can be anything of economic value. This is a big one. The offer is not made available to members of the general public or not public officials, candidates, or their relatives, household members, or the same terms and conditions. Okay? So you're getting it because of your position. It's the but for, we'll talk about the but for exception. So it's anything that you get. Okay? Restrictions on value of gifts. Need to consider a source of gift is, oh, yeah, okay. So these are this is the big take home here. If someone has legislative interest. So if they have some interest in the ESD and they're giving you a gift, then then that's restricted. Okay. So don't take those gifts.
I guess, could you give an example of what that is?
Tougher with an ESD, trying to think.
You could do contractors, you could do, you know, you go to, you go to a conference and some contractor that really wants to sell their equipment to the ESD, you know, says, hey, well, we could, bring you to this next thing and we'll comp you your hotel room and so that you can see that what we're doing and everything, and all of a sudden you just took a gift. Because they have an interest in you making a decision or having some amount of sway in that particular decision. That's what legislative or administrative interest means.
Another example that popped up a few years ago. This was at OSBA annual convention. They were giving away an iPad. It was a contract.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, not okay. So they definitely had legislative, and it was definitely over $50. Okay, so let's get to the but for the catch-all. So here's the concept. Public officials are prohibited from attempting to use their position as public official to obtain financial benefit or avoid financial detriment. The but for test, this is the important bullet point here. You know, but for your position as a public official, you would not have the opportunity to obtain this financial benefit or avoid this financial detriment. Key thing to remember, this is really important. So just because of the fact that I'm on this board, I'm getting this. That's a gift, okay?
An example, Vince, that I've always used over the years with staff members and like in schools or districts or whatever is, you've got somebody over the summer that wants to paint their house and they're like, it's just really hard to get to that very peak of the roof. And I don't own an extension ladder, but I know the school has an extension ladder and I'm only going to need it for the afternoon. Can I use that extension ladder to be able to paint the peak of my house? And the question is like, well, would we lend out that extension ladder to any person who came to the school and say, hey, do you have an extension ladder that I can use? And you're just gonna let anyone from the public. If the answer is, sure, we let anybody use our extension ladders, then that would be fine. But if the only reason you have access to that extension ladder is because you're on staff or part of the board, then you would have just failed the butt test.
Yep. So where this should, where board members get pinched on this is this. So if you're using your credit card, your flight, your whatever, Alaska credit card, you're getting miles for that. You wouldn't be getting that to go to OSBA or go to the NSBA convention back in St. Louis or whatever. Yeah, those freaking flyer miles, that's a gift. Credit card points works the same way, hotels, yeah. And school vendor accounts, so yeah, if you were, I can get a Costco toilet paper from the district, right? No problem, I'll just get a pallet and I'll be done for the year. Nope, can't do that, because you're getting the discount. That was because the public official can't do that. There's Jason's example.
I don't know, any of this is still relevant, but I know years ago, just being, you could get discounts, as a teacher or an administrator in Albany for, getting your cell service through Verizon.
Yep, that would count.
I'm confused, so paid employees can,
You would, there's nuance to this one, is that, so if you're a paid employee and you're getting a discount that is material, that would add up to more than $50 in a given year from a given entity. And it wasn't in policy that it was allowed for you to do, you would actually be violating public ethics law by receiving that discount. Whether it's Staples or whatever, but so a lot of those things that are in that list up there, we recently revised for our staff because there are these like nominal things that happen. And we didn't want staff to get into that sort of pickle. And so we actually have it in policy, and OSBA helped us with that language to say that it's part of compensation.
Yep.
And then, but that does not apply to the board though.
No,
That's just for staff members.
yeah, that's a new law.
Yep.
And hallelujah, it was great,
Uh-huh.
because, I mean,
Yeah, once that law came out, then we were like, okay, we can deal with the frequent flyer miles, or we can deal with the office manager that is like, I can go to Costco and get stuff, and the only reason I can go to Costco, if the school doesn't have a Costco membership, but I have a Costco membership, I can go get snacks for the staff meeting.
right,
But by, using their Costco membership, they're now getting points,
right,
by buying things at Costco. So, we were able to change that for staff members, but it doesn't change anything for board members.
yeah, so I travel for work, and so, but I use Best Western because I get Best Western points. And before, I couldn't use the Best Western points because it would have been compensation to me, but with that law, and those points are now part of my compensation. So now I can use those for personal use, which is really nice, because I was banking them up.
so as a volunteer public official like us, we still do not have that
No,
legislation.
Yeah, so, but you would have to look at it in terms of, are there discounts that you might get because you're a board member? It'd be like, oh, is Verizon giving a discount for being a school board member? You'd have to decline the discount. But if it's, for a teacher and you're a teacher in another spot, and the policy for your teacher part covers you in that way, you could get that discount because that's nothing to do for, right? Yeah. And then a lot of these things, just for all of you to know, are greatly mitigated for by having Lisa set up the travel. All right, so that's why when we do a travel thing, we're just like, no, let Lisa just take care of it. Get your per diem, pay for your meals and stuff with your own money, but you have the per diem that covered you, and then none of that is worrying.
Because when we get our per diem, if I use, let's say, my Emirates credit card, I'm earning points if I use.
And that's fine, because you got the per diem, because you could decide to go on a hunger strike and not eat anything during those days if you per diem.
I mean, I love food.
And, and you wouldn't have violated the law. Right, you know, so it's like, once you get the per diem, like all bets are off with that. You got the per diem and it doesn't matter what you do, but it's like, if you said to Lisa, like, oh, I'll register, I'll get my own plane ticket. Because you're like, I know I'm gonna get Alaska miles by flying right Alaska, then you have a problem.
But you still get Alaska, you know, we're talking about this, okay, but you still get Alaska Air miles, even if Lisa buys the ticket. If you have a,
If you
add it
If
as-
you add your number in and you're getting, that's, you would be violating it.
Yeah.
You should not.
I don't add anybody's number.
She does not add.
No, I do not do anything.
Because
Frustrating thing is sometimes those apps, like the airline apps, want you to put your number in so that you can do things like you can change your seats and whatnot. So I think I may have unintentionally accumulated some miles, but in order to, not violate ethics laws, I'm just gonna leave them there, not redeem them.
Okay, you just wanna make sure that you do anything where you're not gaining. And so my recommendation to people is, don't put the miles in, like Lisa buys the plane ticket, and if they're like, oh, would you like to add you go and you check your bag and everything, oh, you didn't put your miles number in, would you like to put your miles number in? And you say, no, not for this flight, no, I can't do it, can't do it.
So, okay, so something bad happens. And, or one, let's start with the lower risk one. You're not sure. What do? You can pick up the phone, call Oregon Government Ethics Commission, and they'll give you guidance. It's really nice.
Okay.
Yep, okay. You can also call PACE, but they'll just refer you to OGEC. Particularly right now, because OGEC is really doing a lot of work right now. They got some additional funding and staffing, and they're doing a lot of enforcement. So yeah, we've been referring folks to them. If you get into a situation like you were in where you accidentally did something, it's like, oh, now I stepped in it. Pick up the phone and call and say, I stepped in it. Don't wait for someone else to do it.
Yeah. And if you,
Then equal $50, so, I mean,
it might not.
yeah, so
over the
if
course
it's
of the
under
year.
$50, then.
Well, there's a difference between $50 is for gifts, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But adding to what Vincent said, what I've seen over the years, and I know that FOGIC does this, if you call them and you ask for help and get their help in figuring out your way out of it, you will have helped yourself, not, if somebody else files a complaint, they're gonna be like, oh, we already heard about that.
Yeah.
We're working on that. You will not get in trouble the same way as if somebody else called on
Yeah.
you.
You probably will not get fined. I can't promise that, but you'll probably get a letter of education or something.
I do have a question about the use of equipment, and I know Jason gave an example, but one of the things I wondered about that and maybe now is not the time, but like we all get computers. And but we never talk about, like
Appropriate use.
appropriate.
I would only do school district or district stuff on the district issued device.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Didn't even come with solitaire.
Pyro did that.
I took it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially like the calendars, right? Because then I have like 5 different calendars, and so I'm like, can I put this over here so that.
I took the time to share my calendars with each calendar.
Yeah,
And so when I'm on my own personal one, I've shared my school district and my ESD one there, so I'm on my own personal device, just checking what do I got going tomorrow. But I'm not logging into my personal or school district email from my LBL device.
Okay, and I don't either.
Like,
but
if you see Eddie running around with 15 different devices here, because you got a couple more, just a couple.
Yeah, but that's
Pager.
something I wondered about because I end up having a lot of
yeah.
devices and.
Don't stand up your really cool Etsy business on just back. Shopify. Oh my goodness. Someone would do it, okay. Oh, this is what this is if you do something wrong, if you're naughty, you can get in trouble. That's the purpose of this. Following finding the violation, sanctions can be monetary. There is real risk here. And they're not messing around. They do fine.
And they're personal, they're not for the organization,
Exactly,
right? You pay them, not the organization.
that's correct.
I want to go back to gifts because this is the real wisdom. So there's two things that remember the but for. Another thing that remember it. They passed a law that allowed us that we could give ourselves stipends and then nothing ever happened. And this is what stops it. So OGEC is still trying to figure out, so we can't give ourselves a stipend.
There's new legislation in this session, it's about that.
Yeah, so we'll see if they can get that one over the.
That's the whole other thing that ESD was forgotten.
Yep.
It was.
They were not included in
Yeah,
that.
they just totally forgot. Yeah, that was one of the things that ESD, yeah, and then they did the whole
They
stipend
can
thing.
fix on that.
Yeah, they did the stipend thing and they were just like, oh, yeah.
It's over $500 a month. Anyway, sorry, that was probably inappropriate. I would donate that, this a really good cause. Gifts. So here's the hack for gifts. If you take a gift from somebody, Pyro really likes me and he likes me go out and he buys me dinner. It's less than $50, but as soon as you take that gift, you have to log it. Technically, when you pick up that tumbler from the Cisco table at OSB annual convention and walk off with it, that's like a $10 value. You have to log that and track it.
What?
Yeah. That has value.
Yes.
So you mean when I go to the OSBA annual convention and the vendors are there giving you chopsticks? spoons?
That's incidental. So the little ones are little ones, but the big ones, some of those, I got this really awesome tumbler. So at OSB convention is not the big one. It's probably going out and having lunch with somebody. Maybe with, you're out in Corvallis, you and I go out and get lunch sometime. That's a totally plausible because I'm your constituent, right? And do I have legislative interest? Well, my kids are being served by the ESD, so yes. So now that's a gift. So you would have to track that if I bought lunch for you. Here's the hack. Never take a gift. You're always Dutch treat with anybody that has any legislative interest in you, particularly your colleagues, either in neighboring districts or your own board members. Just never take the gift.
Oh, wait, so like if Amy and I went out and I said, okay, this lunch is on me, then she has to log that?
She technically should log that.
Yeah.
Did you have legislative interest in each other?
I want you to know, I put Lisa's gift box on my log.
Yeah.
I just keep a Google Doc, it's got like the date, the gifts, the value, and who gave it to me.
Yeah.
And I just keep a log because it adds up for.
And I've done the same thing, like, there's a couple different times we've been at a conference where, I think the latest one was a year or so ago, Tyler Technologies, who does our our financial information system, and they bought dinner. And I looked at the receipt and I was like, okay, how much did that dinner cost? And it was like, all right, well, they just bought me dinner and it was $28 or whatever. And I wrote it down. Yeah, the date and everything else to make sure that I wasn't gonna go over $50 from Tyler Technologies.
Okay, so it's $50
Per entity.
per entity.
Per entity.
Per year. Yep.
So I could get $50.
But as soon as you
Yes.
take it, you have to log it.
Yes.
Better to be scrupulous and never take it. No one buys you anything.
You guys don't
That's
get
okay.
any more board gifts.
So say, what's the value of that
No
box?
gifts.
So I think there is an exception. You can
Here, let them.
So, like, plaques, buying you dinner, that sort of thing. So they had dinner for you, that's okay. Although I think that's a gray area. There's
So we did check, so we talked.
You did check.
PA legal.
good.
And one thing that now it doesn't happen very often, but whenever we've had guests, I always offer them dinner.
Mhm.
I go in and I introduce myself, would you like to eat something after dinner? Because what they said, if you offer it to anybody who comes, you're fine.
Yeah.
There.
So that's how I have protected the board. And what the advice Lisa and I got from OSBA is just make sure there's enough food for anybody who wants to eat it.
Oh,
So that's funny because as I was coming, one of my kids were like, is there gonna be food at that buffet? Can I come?
And the answer is yes.
Yeah, but it was gonna go too late. But I did have a question then. So that means then that no one in Corvallis, I could go, well, no one in Lynn Benton, Lincoln area, I could go out.
so when we go to lunch next week,
Next
we
week.
should, we should. Yeah, I'm not gonna buy lunch for you because I want to protect you.
Thank you.
So. And when I take some, think about how many times Sandy and I have gone to lunch or got a beer after a meeting or whatever. Countless, we always spot our own stuff, every time.
You know, so
Scrupulously.
I will say, right, especially from a cultural perspective, and I get it, right? I understand what you're saying, but from a cultural perspective, that feels very out of sync.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Had whole conversations with cashiers and wait staff explaining it, saying, no, we have to keep it separate, two separate, all of that, yeah. Really important, and it just makes your life easier. Otherwise, you're like Eddie, where he's got a spreadsheet and he's tracking good on you for doing it because that's what it takes. Or keeping, you snap a picture of the receipt, make a note.
So is it calendar year or school? School.
Calendar year.
Yeah, I do.
I believe it's.
Yeah, it's calendar year.
Okay, and then my other suggestion is, Cairo, could we create an app?
Very long.
An app that the ESD can use, so we can track our stuff that we
The
get.
question that I would ask is how much money would we spend in an app so that you could avoid financial detriment,
The balance, right?
which might actually violate.
Yeah, you have right there to track it.
Create.
Use.
Yes, no, I think my advice would be you're on your own.
Okay.
So we submit this somewhere?
No, you don't have to submit it.
You just hold
You
on.
just hang on to it because it's all about complaints.
If it's just to protect yourself, and so you just keep it to yourself.
So after a year, we can throw it away.
I can tell it's very tight because you guys are getting screwed. And
I don't know what you're about to give me, but I want to know its value.
And how much is it
I was
worth?
gonna say, how much is this worth? Yeah, is it a gift?
Each dot is one penny.
each $10. No, $100, no. Okay, so this is the end of the ethics. I know I'm at the end of the ethics slide, so I can continue. Okay, so I'm gonna put you on break because you are getting squirrely. So we'll take like 5 or 10 minutes breaks, but I want to get ready for what we're gonna do at the end. It's talking about meetings. Now, I want you to ask yourselves some questions. So this is hard to just read from there. Sorry. Okay, so I want to think about your board meetings, and so I want you to think about it in terms of governance orientation and your governance practice. And so as you'll see, I have 2 Cartesian planes here. Does anybody remember high school math? Cartesian planes, remember? Okay, so 2 dimensions here. So are you goal driven? Are you issue driven? And advocacy versus stewardship, okay? So positional advocacy. And then down here is your meeting style. You're spontaneous and expansive in meetings, or are you very structured and intentional? Okay, and then here is it positioning, individual positioning or group positioning? Okay, so I want you to reflect on your own board practices and how you show up. And you have 2 dots, right? Because you're gonna be in one of these quadrants, right? Right in the middle. So figure out where you are, move over and drop the dot. Okay?
So how we show up personally,
No, as a group.
how I perceive.
As a group, unit analysis is the group, not as an individual.
Okay,
So is your board spontaneous and or inexpansive in meeting style, or structured and intentional, individual, focus on individual positioning or group positioning? So we're on that spectrum. Are you goal driven as a board, or are you issue driven? Do you focus on advocacy or organizational stewardship? Okay, these are all continuums that you operate in.
But I think it's gonna be hard, Vince, because I think we all have biases in what we think that we are doing as a board.
No, that's what makes it fun.
That's the way to be the.
That's the fun part. Okay, don't overthink it,
right.
okay?
To understand advocacy and stewardship. I'm not exactly sure what those terms are.
Advocating for particular constituencies,
Oh.
groups, or interests versus stewardship of the organization as a whole.
Thank you.
And so as a collective.
As a collective, let's do it.
What do you think the board?
Or particular, okay?
How we're performing as of today.
But thinking about it as a group today, and this is how you're showing up in the boardroom. Okay, I'm gonna put this over here, so now you're on break for 5 minutes. Go walk around, get your yayas out, and put some dots on it. I'll even put it over here, point it away, kind of anonymous, and then we'll do a big reveal. I'll pull it out and then.
If I don't do it now, I'll forget.
Need Lori back.
Do I even know the brother from Chicago?
No. It's very scientific, only one person. But it's really interesting though. That's what it's the first time I've ever used the Cartesian plane as a. Bus thing. Fun.
Should be put away credit on the meeting this morning. Everybody's name appears differently in my small group.
And I did accept.
The gentleman is Kyle H. Oh, I don't pronounce your name right. Kyle. I think my class obviously do. Kyle H. Said that's what I thought I said.
Because I.
Okay.
This.
Maybe overseas.
Except for that, like in April, so I'm like
My small group breakout.
99%.
You could, what you could probably do is just be like, it's been trying, but that's even that.
Give stuff to program. Again, was the year does, you never, grant you all of those.
Yeah.
I just wondered. Excited. There's still locations are here.
So.
It's gonna be like,
And
even
so
if
you're
you
not-
wait till next year. Guys, year two is the. Really cool. This year.
You're going.
Yeah.
You could sign.
Yeah.
You could put it in like.
Yeah, then you'll get annual convention, there'll be breakout sessions for that.
Okay.
Cool.
That's special. I've got it down.
As long as you-
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I can just leave this calendar. And
You just
then.
let that one.
like,
Yeah.
use it every-
Really.
Or
Okay, Lori's back,
if I keep it.
Yeah, totally agree with that too.
and I have, what? Wait, I have 3 hours, right?
Yes. Till nine.
Oh,
Wait,
nice.
so much.
6 to 9.
So we have, so hour and a half, okay, well, we're gonna do just fine.
Our meetings are until late, the trainings.
Give that to the cat.
This is a really fun slide deck because it has an airplane in it, so we have more airplanes.
Finance is everyone's favorite topic.
This is so awesome, you're gonna be so excited, okay.
Gotta rock this time.
Virtual in school finance, district finance, this works. This slide deck was actually, I purloined this fair and square from a nonprofit training that I went to. So I sit on 2 nonprofit boards and got training. I was like, this slide deck is brilliant. This is perfect. It's just the right level. And yeah, so anyway, I totally plagiarized it and turned it into, made it work for in the education setting. So let's dive in. Boom, school finance. Balanced governance, so returning back to this. So everything that we do at OSBA, we're shooting it through the lens of balanced governance, which is current research connecting school boards to positive impact or governing boards to positive impacts on students. I get that this is calibrated for school districts, I'm sorry. But I mean, this is Paul's grade, this is what they did their research on. I would argue that it still works for ESDs, should work. So the board ensures that, so this is the standard. And within the standard are the indicators that we're looking for. So the board ensures that strategic educational goals of schools are translated into reality through effective alignment with the budget and make sure the school district or ESD is fiscally sound. The board utilizes fiscal resources based on student needs and district policy and strategic goals. Not rocket science here. There are needs out in your districts, right? You're identifying what those are and you're prioritizing them with the help of your education professional, because we never fly without them, right? Okay, and you're aligning in your process, you're aligning your resources to those goals. You can't cover everything. We could do everything, well, that'd be great, but I mean, that's not the world we live in. We live in a deeply resource constrained environment. It's just really tough. So based on those constraints and our priorities, we're going to align our resources using our budget. Okay, that's what this is saying. So what are our roles? What do we do in this? Well, they already talked about this. You approved the budget. We knew that. ooh, taxes, where do you, no, you don't with those taxes, do you?
We still do.
Oh, you do,
Yeah,
cool.
there's still an aspect of that.
So there is still some local resources. Okay, so you are imposing taxes and setting a millage rate during the budget process. Okay? You monitor financial health and budget appropriations. So throughout the year, your finance team brings you monthly reports on how they're executing on the budget. You accept and approve the audit. So you're responsible for ensuring it happens, and you get the audit, you review it. Although there's a hack for that, we'll talk about that later, but on how to consume it, because a budget or an audit is a big document. Right? It's really thick, lots of pages. Most of it is not relevant for board members, just the last few pages on the findings letter as well. So you accept and approve the audit. You advocate as well, you should. That's when the superintendent is using his big voice and trying to make the ESD as visible as possible. And you should join him in doing that to ensure your district is resourced to achieve your mission, so you can support all the districts in your region. You are responsible for the D section of your policies. So those are the finance ones. So approved financial management policies. And you also, at the beginning of the year, authorize fiscal officers and you, of course, if you borrow money and all major contracts. Above a certain threshold, below a certain threshold, you've delegated that to your superintendent. You don't approve the toilet paper contract.
Thank God.
Yeah. We don't want to worry about that. We got good people to do that for us. But if you're gonna do something like, replace boiler or roof or something like that, a building got good, then you're gonna be approving it. Yes, ma'am.
The advocacy to ensure that the ESD is resourced to achieve our mission.
Mhm.
I don't exactly see how that is something I do. I know that's something Jason does, but
Most typically superintendents do that work for ESDs. So they're the ones that are doing the road show, going out and meeting with all your constituent boards.
so, it says board of directors responsibilities. I just don't see how that fits.
There's been a couple of times over the years that I've been here, depending on what's going on in the legislature, where I've asked the board to write letters.
Okay, and that is
Yes,
one of them.
that's really where it kind of comes down to. So, at the beginning of, or like before this last biennium, there was big constraints around the Regional Inclusive Services Grant. And so people wrote letters to the legislators that are representing them in your zone, in your area. So that's not it.
And I've been, gonna forget his name. He's not with us anymore, sweet fellow. I can see his face, darn it. Anyway, he used to be on this board and
You talk about Frank Ricker?
nope,
No, David Dower.
David Dowry, that's,
Yeah,
I mean, David and I would go to coffee fairly frequently, yeah. So,
And participating in any of the legislative days at the Capitol, be our role right
Yeah.
through OSBA. That's how we could
Work with-
advocate.
yeah. Amy's the board representative with OAESD, so participating in their governance work. I mean, there's various ways that we do that, but it's.
Well, I just didn't know, so thanks.
Yeah,
there you go. There's
Exactly why we're
lots of
here.
opportunity. Take board members to not to lunch, or if you do, you guys pay for each other. Sorry, gotta get out of it. But yeah, do it. Those relationships are important, particularly and strategically. You know who your districts are that are kind of on the fence. It's like, do we really need to come your bigger districts? Maybe it's not as big of a deal here in LBL.
There's always a dynamic. Yeah.
Always there, but it's like, could we do this on our own? Those big districts, and that is such a hit for an ESD and the smaller districts. It really hurts when a big district pulls out of an ESD or pulls back their engagement. So that's where having those relationships and being able to pick up the phone and call people and having be on first day basis. I mean, yeah. Yeah, David would show up at our board meetings all the time. Was like, anyway, so there is an opportunity.
That when you go to the, for instance, to the legislature to testify, let's say on a bill or something comes up, isn't that also using your power?
Yeah, political power.
Yeah, so wouldn't that be a conflict of interest?
Yeah, only if you would materially benefit.
Personally.
Personally.
Yeah,
But you advocating for the organization that you're,
That's what you were elected for.
that's exactly.
Yeah.
what you're
Exactly.
voting for, so totally fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Good questions. Okay. Working with the finance team, so this is important. And this is a place where I get phone calls, often where we see board members going around their superintendent. So, CFOs just seem to be chief financial officers, finance officers seem to be very forthcoming people. I don't know why, but oftentimes they make themselves available to board members. But here nor there, this is often an opaque topic. Public budgets are impenetrable. They are hard. I've been doing it for over a decade now, and it's still hard to read a public budget. And so we often have questions. So it's really important to start with the superintendent. So always direct your questions to your superintendent. They're your employee, not the CFO. The CFO works for the superintendent. Now, your question may very well go immediately to the CFO, and that's where the answer will come from. But it's just important that you observe the chain of command. It really is, or lines of the floor. It's also in your policy. It's your policy. And
Yeah, you've been absolutely right on. Yeah, a lot of times what I will do when people have had questions, sometimes it's Rocco and I will meet together for the board member. Sure. There's lots of different ways to do it, but yeah, I always appreciate getting heads up. And just so you know that if you went directly to Rocco, he's not going to have the conversation until he talks to me anyway, so. If Amy reaches out, just so you know, Amy reached out to talk to me about these things.
And I love
I
that
will, yeah.
that you guys have that relationship, and that
Yeah.
just so you have that firewall. Not every organization is that way.
Yeah.
Where, it's hard for, a cabinet level person to say no to a board member. Really tough, very uncomfortable. Okay, so admonishment aside, if you do need information, request it in advance of the meeting. It's really tough to blindside people in the meeting. And if you do, this is true of anything, but it often comes up with finance. Be ready for I'm not sure, but I can find that information. I'll get back to you. Always, if you're coming with a novel question in the board meeting, approach that with humility. You should have asked ahead of time. It's just the way that we work. No surprises, the doctrine of no surprises. If you do surprise your team, give them ample grace. It's like, that's totally fine. Get that afterwards. For big requests, the ones that, if there's an existing report, it's existing data, it's fine to ask for those. But if it's something that's going to generate, trying to think of a good ESD example. I get that'd be a good one.
I would say if it's goes beyond the report that you see every month and it's like, well, I would like information at the program level, at each department level of how we spend money and a monthly report and something like that would actually take a whole lot of extra work for Rocco to put together. That will be something that I would push back. If one person's asking for that, I would look to the board and say, is this something the board would like to vote on to direct me to do? And we would do it if the whole board wants to do it, but just because one board member wants it. If the rest of the board's like, no, you don't need to spend your time that way, then we're gonna take the direction from the whole board.
And the way we make those, And the way we make that decision is you have goals, things that you're aiming at, what you're working on. Does that curiosity from Director Adams, Pat John on the board, is that aligned with our strategic priorities? Is that going to take us where we need to go? Or is this just Director Adams, being curious and digging into this one data or what?
Yeah. And sometimes what I've seen over the years is that sometimes it is somebody that's just curious. Sometimes it's somebody that's what they want and they want to push on that and they're really getting the weeds, and the rest of the board's like, no, that's not our goal. Like that's director level stuff or something for the staff. Like we're not gonna dig into those weeds.
Yeah.
And
How's that landing for everybody? Again,
there's a lot of weeds. Yeah, exactly.
Again, it goes back to, we always go together. We never go alone.
I have a question though, what if, like you have questions about finances, but it's not necessarily like particular things on the report, it's more like, like finance 101.
Sure.
Like, you go to.
So I think then ask me. And actually, Bill, can I use you as an example? Like this summer, Bill had questions and he was wondering about how things work. And Bill met with Rocco and me. And we shared some information and he got to ask his questions. And then just set it up with me and we'll do that.
I just want to give Rocco props, because Rocco is really good at taking complex things and bringing them down to an understandable level where
Well, that's summary.
laymen like us.
I love the summary that he writes. That's not just reading the numbers and reading the chart, but it's actually something I can read. It's text. And he puts it, that's my favorite.
Weird stuff in there, like he explains and it's like, oh, okay, that's why I'm seeing this, like, yeah.
Absolutely. He's really brilliant at taking really complicated things and putting it into a format to be understood. I mean, he does it for our staff, for our leaders, and he's happy to do that. And we just look at it from a standpoint of, and the other thing is that there's something that's really a good thing. So like if Denise is like, I'd really like to know this, and I might see, well, are there other people that would like to know that? So then we might do something larger, have a work session and be able to get something. So, yeah.
Great. Idea just popping in my head. It's like, I think about the small districts, think about Odyssey and PERS. Just have like a PERS webinar.
Yeah.
It's like, everybody log on and learn about PERS. Because Rocco is the PERS whisperer, maybe. That'd be great. I would come. I don't know. Okay, the budget cycle. So we always start with our priorities. Everything starts with our priorities, and if this is color coded. So we start with priorities. We're gonna review those. Staff is gonna help us with that. Staff are gonna go back and see what are the needs out there. Probably gonna need some outreach. What are the needs that districts have? It's building out your package, your service package for the year would fit into this, reviewing this. You're gonna, articulate with your strategic plan. So, and when I say strategic plan, board, you're in charge of giving direction. Those are the goals. So those are the priorities, the overarching priorities, 3 to 5. I don't know, how many strategic goals do you have?
3 objectives.
3, perfect, wonderful, I love it, keep it tight. No more than 5. The strategic plan is the operational plan. Those are the strategies and actions underlying those priorities. That's the domain of the superintendent and the leadership team, figuring out how to make this happen, okay? Next, we're gonna gather information, whatever information that we need. Often this is just planning, staffing, resources, whatever we need to make our year go. We're starting to roll up our expenditures, and we then go ahead and draft a budget. And then it moves through the budget process, budget approval, and then finally the board monitors progress throughout the year. And then we rinse and repeat. You set the priorities at the end of the year, and we do it again. We're always doing this process, it never ends. Okay. So this is a wonderful resource, local budgeting manual. It will put you to sleep just like that. But it is really, really important. There's another one, local budgeting in Oregon, is another really good resource for questions that we have. You know, and you can get them as PDFs, they're online, totally easy to find.
And once I get Vince's slides, like Lisa or I will send Vince's slides out to everybody and yeah, see they'll think it's their slide decks.
So you won't refer to this very often. Just take it, download it, put it into Google Drive or whatever you guys use. Just hang on to it. And when you have budget questions, go there first and just search it, keyword search it, like budget committee. And just walk through it and you can answer most of your questions. This is the way that we at OSBA look brilliant. You guys email us with questions and then we go, I have no idea. And then we go and research and we go find these great government documents, go through, and then we're like floating out of them and it's like statutes all over the place. And they look really cool. But all we're doing is what you can do yourselves is go find these documents and do a little bit of research yourself. Not that I don't mind doing that for you. Budget process. Okay. So you guys are all responsible for this whole thing. This is you. You have to do, no, I wouldn't do that to you. This is mind numbing. So you are responsible for all of this, but you have lots and lots of help to get you through that. You have Rocco to guide you through this process because it is a little complicated. So what you're really responsible for is this and a little bit at the end. So first, you know, they're going to roll up a budget. They're going to create a budget document and they're going to bring it to you and you're going to have a budget committee. You're going to go ahead and meet. How many times do you guys typically meet? One and done.
Usually.
Boom, love it. So one and done. So, and the budget committee, the whole purpose of the budget committee is to make sure that the budget document lines up with the strategic priorities of the organization. And it all makes sense. We can see that. That's the whole purpose. Used to be a lot more useful pre the 1990s when we had more local control of local revenue sources. But with Measure 5, Measure 50, those, it's pretty much set at 3%. Local resources increase at a set rate. There's really, we don't have a lot. So really, it's just that strategic alignment piece. Awesome that you can get it done in one. The next piece is over here. So this is the board itself. Over here was budget committee. This is the board. You're going to hold your statutorily required to have a budget hearing, which just means you take public comment on the budget. But it's called a budget hearing. You have to determine the tax levy, but Rocco will do that for you. So you don't have to figure that out yourself because I don't even know how they do it. Some magic calculus that happens.
It is magic.
It's the shit.
Yeah, but the whole budget's match.
So, and then you adopt the budget in the dark, you can see the deadlines. So you have to have it done by June 30th. And they have to submit the budget to DOR by July 15th. Okay? Yes.
So this may not be a conversation for this time, but looking at this and thinking about it, I think of our constituent districts. And they're really the audience that they're, so do you do like a survey or?
Yeah, so part of the pre-process, can you highlight the whole thing once?
Oh, go back. No, we're not ready for you.
Right there. So when you look at the second box where it says prepare the proposed budget, there would be like a whole flow chart of all the different things that Rocco and I are doing to prepare the proposed budget. The portion of the budget that directly impacts districts is the tier 1 budget. And we go through a whole process to approve, have the tier one budget approved by the superintendent. And we actually just did that this last Friday. So, around the mid part of February to the end of February is usually when we are asking the superintendents to approve our tier one budget. This was pretty smooth this year. We really only had we had one conversation with them. We presented what we're going to do, but part of the simplicity of that this year is that we're in the first year of the biennium going into the second year of the biennium, and we know exactly how much money we have, which is very different than the year before where we're doing the guessing game. A year ago, we met with superintendents and business directors about half a dozen times. Nancy, I think it's like 6 to 8 times. And then we had multiple other meetings. And so there was a lot of pieces. We also met with special ed directors and curriculum directors, and we met with business directors separately. I mean, there was a whole iteration of meetings that developed that got us to the point where the superintendents felt comfortable approving our tier one budget. And that was all based on the local service plan. So as much as we have strategic planning, it's really about our own improvement. And, it's like those goals that you saw when we did our retreat. When it comes to the districts and what they want, it's driven by the local service plan. We have all these conversations around the LSP. And it's like, is that what you want? If that's what you want. We're going to build a budget based on what you want and servicing that well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And so kind of what I've done since I've been superintendent, and Tanya did this in a very similar way, is that we really are tackling this in a big way every other year on the biennial cycle.
And our budget committee also has somebody each, so that's where I get to
Exactly.
they're on our budget committee, they come and say. That was somebody every.
Yep.
Did serve on it though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Nancy and I spend time going out to boards, and we hit each one of the board meetings. They're really busy primarily in December, January, and February, because we're trying to go into board meetings during this time when they're seeing the local service plan, so we can answer questions about the local service plan. So that's not the thing. So
Yeah, I went to see them candy twice, because they had questions and then they wanted me there when they voted for it in case they had
other questions.
Yeah. Or even explaining what a local service plan.
Yeah, and every time that we go, even though there's a lot of people that have been board members for a while, we go in, we talk about what the local service plan is, we talk about the governance of it and how it comes about, that this local service plan has already been approved by all 12 superintendents. It's been approved by our board. Now we're asking for it to be approved by you and our school district board. So it's just that education that we're over. Yeah. Good question.
So, and Barry, we asked a probing question about how we're serving ESDs. So we were talking about level up this first year cohort that we're doing with board members. So because we have Mark Mulvihill alongside and integrally part of that project. So we have ESD new board members on there, but we're also teaching about ESDs in that. So new board members in school districts know what an ESD is and knows what that local service plan is when it finally shows up. So they're like, do we need this? And do we really? And whoa, that's a lot of money. That's real money, because it is. And do we really need to do this? It's like, get that attitude.
And sometimes what we've had to do, so a year ago, Rocco and I had to really help some of our business directors and some of our districts understand that, sure, if you took your 4.5%, because that's the money that we're playing is, it's 4.5%. Like if we didn't have ESDs, they would get an additional 4.5% of the state school fund. And most of the school districts could not put together the services that we provide for 4.5% away, which they do. It's like, all right, well, now you're on the hook for all special ed evaluations. You start listing all the things that you're gonna have to do with your 4.5%. And most districts are like, yeah, we could do that.
Good question. Good discussion. Okay, so budget process. So you're gonna go ahead and adopt the budget by June 30th, get submitted, life is good, right? Okay, but board governance descriptor 12.1, board members are knowledgeable of the district budgeting process, but Chairman Phil Marshall von Moltke tells us that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and that is true with budgets. It is just a plan. It's not, you are not gonna come in perfectly on budget. So there's no place where that is real.
The joke that we always like to say is the day after you approve the budget, it's obsolete.
Check. And yes. Okay, so descriptor number 2.12.2, budgeting decisions are based on student needs, adopt district policy and goals and the district's financial ability to meet those needs. You just heard the superintendent describe how you guys are doing that. So going out to districts, identifying, working with superintendents, we're the educational experts for those districts, right? So collecting that information on what their system needs and making sure that the service provision in the local service plan meets their needs.
And we're doing, sorry, Vince, but we're doing that with districts, but we also, on a monthly basis, are doing deep dives into budget things with each one of our programs as well. That covers the grants that we have and everything. So we know exactly how much money there is in any given program. You know, do we need to spend more, spend less? You know, and we're looking at it on a monthly basis so that that can change as we go up throughout the year. And in particular, when we get to this time of the year, are we carrying money over into next year so that we, you know, don't get to a spot where we're either overspent or underspent? We're managing those resources well. And so that's something that Rocco and our teams are really quite good at. And we have a really great structure that we've developed over the last 3 or 4 years to do that.
Perfect. So, oftentimes I'm working with folks, particularly when I use this with folks who are new to boards. And so often people that get on boards have a business background of some sort. So I drew this distinction here. So businesses are really different than school districts or ESDs. Public entities are really different. You know, of course, businesses are proud of their goal, their mission is to maximize profit for shareholders and owners. Here, ours is completely different, where we're preparing all children for success in post-secondary life. Someone owns a business, and here we're a public entity. We're providing a public good. Okay. Sale of goods and services is where your money comes from, or where business money comes from, and to a certain degree, kind of, ESDs are the same.
We actually cover both of those.
Yeah, you're kind of in the middle here.
Yeah.
Although ultimately, it's all the money is going to come from here. It's going into district budgets, but
Yeah.
you're reliant on the districts that you're for your revenue.
There's definitely, it's an indirect step there, but you know, yes, the money is state and federal funds, but if it goes to a school district or the school district purchases services from us, it's still state and federal funds, but it's being purchased and it's revenue in a different way to us.
Yeah,
It almost feels like they should be another town.
maybe, yeah. Tax status, of course, businesses are subject to taxes. You're a public entity, so you're levying taxes. Actually, the governance can be similar. Yeah, public, private entities can have boards of directors. You know, but they're focused in a different place, whereas you're publicly elected and accountable to the community. Although over here in a business, they're accountable to their shareholders. That's their community, right? And of course, the emphasis here on accountability is really different, you know, where we're doing financial returns versus mission fulfillment. That we're definitely mission driven. So we're probably closer to the nonprofit world than we are to businesses here in the way that we're motivated and structured. So, descriptor of 12.3, board members have a basic understanding of district revenues and expenses. You should be getting monthlies on these, so this is where we want to focus our attention, so. You know, what is significant for the organization, revenue and expense, but what's most important here are the key considerations. When do you get that revenue? When does it arrive? How much is it frequency? How does it impact and is it reasonable and necessary? I'm assuming that your funding is pretty braided. You probably have grant funding, multiple different grants, plus you're getting resources from your districts, plus you also have local resources. And so the finance team has to blend all that together using these factors to determine how to do that. Okay. Next one, 12.3, the board reviews monthly finance. Now we're getting to the good stuff. The board reviews monthly financial statements provided the superintendent understands their role in the oversight of the budget. So monthly financials is really where we see operationally the board engaging with the finance of the district. The other part is the budget cycle that we're getting ready to go into in May. Monthlies is the other side of this. So types of accounting. This is really super nerdy. This is the nerdiest slide that I have. Okay. So for our households and for most small businesses, we use cash accounting. So when you get money, it goes into the cash register, or we swipe the card, or we get paid direct deposit, boom, goes in, and we account for that. That's revenue in, we account for it when it arrives. And we also, when we pay the bill, we take it out of our bank account, right? Public entities don't typically do it that way. Larger nonprofits don't either. They use accrual accounting, particularly nonprofits that are deeply reliant on grant funding, use accrual accounting. So it's when you get the award. So when I get that award letter that I'm going to get X dollars for this grant or this service, it then can go into the budget. Now, I haven't received that money, but I can spend against it if I have. Of course, we have to maintain an ending fund balance to do that. But so the ending fund balance is the amount of money at the bottom of the budget that we can spend on based on what's accrued that we know is coming. That's why when we go, wait, come on, is that the right direction? That's why timing, amount, and frequency is important. Okay, does that make sense? It's about as nerdy and in the weeds as I'm gonna get. If you want to get nerdier and deeper in the weeds, you need an actual finance professional to do this. I don't have any skill in finance. I find it kind of terrifying, so. Okay. Same with expenses. So it's when they receive the bill. This is why collective bargaining agreements are so good for public education, is because once you lock that in, you know how much your personnel costs are going to be. It's locked in. And we can predict what that's going to look like. Except for PERS. But I mean,
Every
but it's
year.
like, yeah, it's semi-predictable. And so, yeah, the accounting types are really different than what we're used to. So if we come in expecting cash accounting like I do at home, this is not going to look, when we look at the budget and look at how our finance professionals are working with this, it's going to look really, really different. And it's really confusing. Okay, so understand they're accruing things that may not actually be there yet. Okay. So financial documents that you get, I'm sure that you're getting these, but statement of activities. So in the business world, we call these profit and loss statements. So it's just cash flow, money in, money out. You're getting a statement of that, what revenue came in, What did we spend out? Statement of financial position, God forbid, we had to liquidate the district. Would you be on the positive side? So if we sold the building, all the equipment, everything, would that match all the debts? Now, most public entities are vastly in the positive. They hold lots and lots of assets. So they're usually very, very positive. But if you ever anybody sit on a nonprofit board? Yeah, so when you're looking at this, you want to make sure that your entity is positive. And if it's not, then there is a plan to that space because it's a rough place to be. Okay. The other one is budget to actual. And the superintendent already said this, underspending and overspending. So it's like a plane trying to land. And we've all seen a runway, and there's this sweet spot. The landing zone is after these markers. So we've all seen those lines, that's what that is. This is the landing zone right here, where they try to aim for, okay? And so when we're on budget, when we're spending down on our budget, that will land us right in that landing zone. That's the sweet spot. We don't want to overspend, because if we overspend, then we're going to run short. We're going to hit the runway too early, or maybe not even hit the runway. And that's bad. And what that means is that you just don't have enough resources going into the next year. We don't want to overspend. Okay, and we don't want to underspend either. Remember, we're a mission-driven organization, right? And so if we're underspending, that means that there's resources that aren't going to children. So we want to make sure that we're spending on target, so we're fulfilling our mission. So how do we do that? When this is with our budget to actual and our monthly financials. So it's February. So you're probably, but last month's monthlies should have had about the budget half spent out, roughly, give or take. I mean, so, and we should be watching that to make sure that we're on glide path. In the next glide path, I used an aviation term, coming in, and later in the year, you should be about 75% spent out, give or take. And you're looking for anomalies in the finance document that would suggest that we may not do that. Okay. So we want to come in close to on budget. Now, does the plane always hit right at the lines? No. It's somewhere around in here. It's somewhere in the landing zone. Even pilots are not perfect. We're all human. Okay. So even the approach is a plane. Okay. Yeah, modern crystal health. Yeah, so of course, review your financials monthly. If you have questions, if you're having trouble reading your monthly financials, ask your superintendent, set up a meeting and sit down and go through it. If multiple board members are struggling with your monthly financials, that's what you get. Put it in a board meeting. Yeah. Now, I will always take a finance talk because there's always something to learn. If you have big projects, you may have go, no go benchmarks on big spending projects. You may have to hit a revenue goal or be in the right place fiscally to make something happen. And so you should be discussing those. And then looking for those trends, just like the plane coming in for a landing, you're looking for trends in your year and then across years. So I assume that in your monthly financials, you have like current year, budget to actual, previous year. So you're looking at your trend over time to make sure, and you're comparing backcast, so you're looking at the previous year's performance to just compare and see where are we at and looking for deviations. I'm a big fan of percentage difference. When I don't have it, I end up getting out a calculator and writing them in there because the dollar amounts, it's like, is that a lot? I don't know. But 25% feels like a lot to me. That's gonna catch my eye more than a dollar. Audits. Oh my goodness, gotta do them. It's critical, has to happen. So here's some things that you need to know about audits. First, audits do not necessarily measure the fiscal health of your organization. they track accounting practices. Okay, so we've heard lots of horror stories in Oregon about districts getting into tough financial situations, and it's like, we had a good audit. How did we get into this situation? So your audit, and the other piece here is it doesn't look at your whole budget. It doesn't look at all your practices. They take a sample, they take transactions and trace them through your accounting system to make sure that you're following your practices.
It looks at practice and process,
Right,
not the actual numbers. I mean, well, they look at actual numbers, but I mean, the big thing that misses, like, to the districts that have gotten in trouble is that they can have a clean audit, but they're not paying attention to their cash position. And like, oh, well, we're spending to our budget and, we're doing all the processes right. And you can still overspend your budget, you can still overspend the cash that you have.
Yep. So that's where your monthly financials are critically important, that you understand them. And then if you don't understand them, you're asking the right questions, okay? If you don't understand something here, go back and ask. Let's see, determines correctly, yeah. Highest level assurance, board's role, oh, report to auditor. Okay, so you will be asked, so I see nodding heads, you will get a questionnaire. As anybody in your organization done any fiscal malfeasance, things like that, and it's required as part of the audit. Okay, so answer those, respond to that questionnaire and be honest. And then reviewing the audit report, big document. Flip all the way to the back and look at the findings letter. Because that's where if there's any irregularities, that's where it's going to show up. You're probably not going to fully understand what that irregularity is. Once you know that there's something there, then you can ask the questions, or you can go back into the document and find out what it is. But do not read your whole audit report. Yeah, you'll just pass out. I've done it 2-3 times. I was like, this is crazy. No, just read the findings letter at the back. And if something comes up, most organizations get clean audits.
Yeah.
And when they do, round of applause. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, we want really good accounting practices, because that's what keeps us safe. So always celebrate a clean audit. And if there isn't, then that's a point where the board sits in informed oversight. If there's something, an internal control issue, and then that's something that the superintendent will, or the CFO will report on. This is how we fixed it. And then you move on. Okay? Audits, what else? That's it. We get to go to the pretty stuff. Oh, wait, no, we have scenarios. Okay, I want to save time. Oh, no, we'll do some scenarios. So good, because
They're good. You shared the scenarios with me. So
I switched them up a little bit. Okay, so scenarios. So these are finance scenarios. We love doing scenarios. During a board meeting, there are multiple board members who have questions about expenditures that were in the budget they approved, including the purchase of new education technology. Board members are curious about how the money was spent, and they want to make sure that teachers are receiving professional development so that they know how to teach with the new technology. Okay, so what's good here?
Asking questions. And to make sure that, the money is, that the money spent is actually going to the mission of improving technology and education.
Yeah, strategic alignment for sure. So I think that could be better.
Asking the questions before approving the budget?
Okay, yeah, you're right. Yes, ask ahead of time, but yes. But by and large, this is a great conversation. This sounds like a good board meeting to me. I would love to be there. What would be the impact of this?
Technology that's making a difference and that's been used in a way that is effective and that teachers know how to use it.
Yeah,
Kids might benefit.
kids might benefit.
When staff would feel the care that they're being resourced.
Oh, That's what I was looking for. Staff feel value. It's like, whoa, the board took interest. We're doing this thing. We bought this really big, and probably they proposed this new technology. They said, this is gonna transform our operation. This is so important. We would really appreciate it if you would invest in this. And then have this conversation. It's perfect. This is great board work. Except that they didn't ask it ahead of time, which they should have. Okay, board member who has repeatedly claimed the district office, okay, this is not an ESD one, but so imagine you're on the school board. District office is top heavy. Emails the finance director, requests a detailed accounting of district office administrator expenditures across the current and 4 previous budgets.
Left out the super.
What's going on? Oh, hold on. What's going on? Well, you're gonna like dog, like Amy was like coming from the top rope on that one.
What's our board chair right there?
What's good here?
Yeah, they're curious, that's interesting.
Okay, they're curious. I like it. Anything else good here?
I think wanting to compare. Like wanting to compare the different budgets.
Wants to look at trend. Yeah, good. I like it.
Wants to make sure the money spent is spent in ways that actually impact kids.
Love it. Yeah. Thank you for taking perspective there. People can do bad things or things that can be harmful, but they're coming from the right place. Okay. Okay, Amy, from the top row.
Left out the superintendent,
Yeah.
asking for something that's gonna take a lot of man hours.
Yeah. It's a big ask.
Also asking something that's not our lane,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
don't decide the cabinet or the top. We don't decide the
Right. Yeah, superintendent makes that staffing choice. Absolutely. Although I've for years harped on Ryan that he runs the DO2 league, but completely different. I'm on the opposite side of that, but I never made that ask. Okay, let's look at another one. At the final budget approval meeting, the board members propose, I'm sorry, it's late. Slow down. A board member proposes adding funds to send more secondary teachers to Avid or pick the program of your choice that's relevant for your competence. Professional development, so the district can move toward becoming an Avid district. Staff respond that the budget is already balanced and that no funding was set aside for this level of expansion. Another board member asks directly which existing program or service the member would recommend cutting to cover the Avid costs or program costs, and the room goes quiet. Okay, anything good here?
Avid's an awesome program.
The program might, right?
This is the shiny object scenario.
The member is being reminded that the money is not magic, it just appears, it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, gotta have a balanced budget. Let's stick to that value. Anything else? Okay. What could be better?
It's a question that should come up months before.
Or like budget development.
Yeah.
Should come from programming and not from
Yeah.
board members.
Yeah, Avid is a huge program. Takes immense amounts of professional development. And system development.
It was nice that the room went quiet instead of everyone going, you idiot.
I was trying to make it dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's the impact of this?
Pension.
It's just really frustrating. And the public does this. Oh, bless their hearts. They always come and say, you've got to save this. It's like, what are we gonna cut? Gotta cut something. What are we gonna cut? Yeah,
Zero sum.
yeah, there's only so much pie. You don't have unlimited pie. Okay, let's see, what else? Oh, this is a good one. The staff proposed using a portion of the proceeds from selling a gifted parcel of district property to soften an upcoming reduction in force. Several board members pushed back, arguing the district should use all of the sale revenue to fully avoid layoffs and diffuse community backlash. One member cautions that the funds are one-time money and asks what happens next year when the structural gap is still there.
I'm with that.
Smart board member.
This is a real scenario. This really happened.
It's happened in a lot of different ways, I'm sure, across
Yeah.
many school districts across the state and country.
Oh, yeah, there's.
Like with the ESSER.
Considering this right now.
The ESSER funds, some districts hired people, but the ESSER funds were one-time financial packages, and you're gonna have to pay the people year after year after year. You're gonna have to have it budgeted from somewhere.
Yep. So what's good here?
I think they, like you're hearing, like diverse opinions essentially.
Yeah.
That is not just a one, like everybody goes with whatever, that we can actually like push back essentially. Those, yeah.
They're trying to soften.
They're coming from the right place.
Yeah, like,
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you don't get to do third grade over again, so we're gonna spend the money, there's that philosophy. It's a diverse perspectives. You've already talked about the bad. It's like using one-time money. It's very, I don't need that. It's your values. Okay, I think I got a couple more here. As the budget is presented, board members raise probing questions on rising PERS costs. Ooh, PERS came up again. Multi-year enrollment trends and uncertainty around federal funding. Rather than debating line items, they ask staff how these pressures affect sustainability over the next 2 to 3 years. The conversation swerves into discussions of risk, trade-offs, and what adjustments might be needed if assumptions change. What's the problem here?
It makes me think that maybe our district team didn't think about those things until the question was asked.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I've ever gotten anybody to come up with.
Yeah, like.
It's a trick question.
Good, because I was thinking, that's what you should, that's what you wanted the process for.
all the
Yeah.
timing, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
that should have been
Like,
just.
yeah, the conversations were.
6
done
months
then.
6 months ago.
Yeah,
That's the only thing.
yeah.
This is a really robust, this is the type of conversations we want to have. Maybe not at this time.
Yeah. Those are great conversations, and that's exactly what,
That's
I think if we were in that at that moment, and that was the budget committee conversation, it's like, this is exactly the conversation we should have had 8 months ago,
Yeah,
so let's think about what we need to do for this coming year. Let's get this budget passed, and then let's schedule time to have this conversation so that we can mitigate for our risk as we move forward, because
yeah,
those problems aren't probably going to go away.
right.
And you also, just because you pass a budget with certain budget authority, let's say that we have budget authority for $100 million, it doesn't mean you have to spend $100 million in that coming year. So there's different things to do, but yeah, so all of the right things to talk about.
And we ought to have these conversations multiple times a year. So when a budget forecast comes out and our finance professional, uses their crystal ball to try to predict the future, and we have this conversation. And oftentimes, if it's happening during the budget cycle, we're not necessarily talking about this budget cycle, we're thinking about next year, which you will. So come May, you will talk about next year in the context of this year's budget. So, but yes, that's exactly the type of questions we want to have. I think that's it. Finance, we feel fortified, you feel ready? Are you excited? Was that fun? Finance is fun, isn't it? Okay.
Finance is fun.
Rocket should have been.
Yeah, should have been.
Rocket,
Yeah.
Finance is fun.
Finance is fun.
Go deep. I mean, sounds like you gotta admit, I haven't met him. I haven't met Rocco,
He's great.
but Jason really likes him, so. You should go deep with your finance strategy. It will make you a better farmer. Definitely will make you a better farmer. Okay, wait, you can't see this. But anybody online is gonna see this really big. This was really fascinating. So I had you think about your meetings. I gave you yellow stickers and they didn't show up, so I put on green ones. You didn't notice that? I was like, yellow, that's on the contrast. Okay, so governance orientation. So I asked you to score yourself. Thinking about advocacy. So that's usually where we're thinking about a single constituency or a particular area of constituency versus stewardship, thinking of all students, thinking of our community holistically. And then issue driven, similar to this, but we're being driven by specific topics, specific things, versus being goal driven. You know, we have strategic priorities and sticking to those and staying focused. And you scored yourselves predominantly over here on the stewardship side and goal driven, which from a trainer's point of view is pretty virtuous. It's not that we ignore these things, you know, because we're always being pulled in these directions, but that you spend the preponderance of your time over here in quadrant, quadrant two. I had to remember, which is where you should be. And I created these on my own, so learning how to interpret these. Okay, government and practice. I asked you to, this is kind of the style, the way that you show up in your meetings. So spontaneous and expansive, which is just another way of saying you guys just have a conversation and wander all over the place. If you were way over here on this versus very structured and intentional. So a board that is, you know, just we just go through, we're just going to vote. We're not going to discuss much and go home. Those are the boards that are having 1 hour meetings and getting out. Okay. You tend to be more structured. Okay. So you're not way out here, but you're more structured in the way. And then individual positioning, the interests of individuals versus the group. So you tend to work more cohesively as a group. So overall, good. Observations, what are we seeing here? I gave you the answer. I shouldn't have given the answer, but I was so excited. Reactions, I guess. Any reactions to that information?
It's not surprising. I mean, I do think that we are all pretty well aligned in how we operate. I think that we are a goal-driven board, and I think that the retreat really helped to remind us of what our goals were recently, and that, you know, what decisions we make need to align with those. I think that maybe it's just the nature of the beast that we're in ESD, so our issues aren't quite like what school district issues are. So I think that that's probably why we're far from being issue driven. We have great management, which helps to reduce the number of issues, and then we're not similar to school districts that face a lot of diverse issues. So I think that helps us to focus on the goal side of things.
I think I agree with everything you're saying. And it feels like, our cabinet works well together, so the organization that we see is goal driven. And I feel like we are kind of reflecting that effective system.
Great. Other perspectives?
Oh, in addition, I just want to say there's several of us who are new, and I haven't been through a whole year to know whether this is gonna hold true. We go through budget or what other things.
Sure. Yeah, Yeah, that's what I was about to say too, that, as, Lori just said, when you start, I'm curious to see what happens over time. My guess is that I think I think we are goal driven. I do think so. But I'd be more curious about where we line up in terms of the structured intentional versus, what is that?
Spontaneous and expansive.
Yeah, because that's the topic, right?
Yes.
So one of my prompt questions, and I mean, I realize I only have 15 minutes, but where on these charts, and maybe you're going here, where on these charts do you experience friction? You know, do you need more space to be spontaneous and expansive?
I think in the individual position, because we each have different values, different lenses that we look things through. And so I think that for us as a board, that's when more friction comes in, because I might believe something, somebody else might say something else, or challenge that, what I'm saying, which has been one of our experience that we've had in this.
And so you feel that you don't have the space to unpack that?
That is correct.
Yeah. So maybe that's one friction that we can identify. So individual versus group. So maybe we're going along to get along.
Yeah.
Which kind of, we need to take an excursion out here into individual position and have a deeper conversation about our values. And then clearly you're gonna get a lot of good work done, board work done out here.
Yeah.
But are we getting the best out of the group?
No,
By not
no,
allowing us.
censoring themselves because they don't want the friction.
Yeah. Or being able to. So conflict is an endemic part of board work. I mean, if you don't like conflict, you shouldn't be here because that's the very nature of being on a governing board. We're not going to always agree, and that's natural. The key is to have constructive conflict, be able to have that conflict in a way that we all grow and make better decisions, that the group makes a better decision. And more, I mean, certainly these days, boards are being asked to navigate really tough topics and make tough choices. Where if we're in a very structured environment, when we're just doing Robert's Rules of Order, we're not able to have the conversations that we need to have that to make an effective decision. I don't know how much that shows up in ESD work. It's certainly showing up in school board work.
Absolutely. And to me, at our last board meeting, without getting specific, we had someone come with public comment that brought a question to the board. And we all had an opportunity to answer our perspective on it. And I thought that was really fruitful. How we all express ourselves. And I learned some things to adapt or refine my position based on what some of you folks said. So I really enjoyed the positivity of that collaboration.
That was actually perfect. It's funny that you say that though, because that's when I thought about spontaneous and expansive, that's a really strong example of a moment where the board was very spontaneous.
Yeah.
Because that was not on the agenda, and it's in many situations, there would be boards that wouldn't do it. And, and so there'd be good reason not to in some circumstances, and in other circumstances, there's a good reason to do. But that was definitely spontaneous and expansive versus just structure of like sticking with what's on the agenda.
And I didn't ask the gentleman, but I would perceive that we answered his question in a positive way. I hope so.
Yeah.
Other frictions that you're seeing here. And maybe you're not able to push into, maybe there are constituencies that need attention. I don't know. I mean, because you're kind of over here in quadrant 2 to the detriment of quadrant 4.
I think at least, I think a part of it is that newness. right? And trying to figure out, okay, so what does it really mean to be on the board? And you're learning, right? Yeah.
How, oh, yeah, please.
So I had trouble with this, but through some questioning, I got some more clarity. Mine's the one dot that's over the line toward advocacy, because from my experience, limited as a classified employee, first coming into contact with what an IEP is, going, oh, and working with special ed children, every person, every child is unique. And I don't know if it's fair to say some are more unique than others. So we can have 30 kids in a classroom. We really have to tailor education as best as we can for each student. So that's what I think when I think of ESD, we're really refining advocacy down to the individual level with all the services we provide. And I don't know if that provides friction, but the friction to me comes at just the limitation of resource.
And meeting that growing need.
Yeah.
Because let's be clear, I mean, the expectation has changed on K-12 education. When I graduated from high school, we had a 70% graduation rate, and that was fine because there was an economy for kids to go into. Today, if a kid doesn't graduate, they will struggle to find success. You just articulated it beautifully that the expectation that we're going to meet each and every kid, regardless of who they were. Whereas, I mean, where I went to school, we didn't have special ed kids. They went to a whole other district. They just didn't do it. It's fascinating that I'm looking back at my education. They just externalized that. I don't know what happened to those kids.
What did it do to those kids to be separated?
Yeah. So that idea of meeting every kid, regardless of who they are and the conditions of their birth, oh my goodness. That's deep. That is deep work. I'm curious, does the board have work sessions? You schedule work sessions?
Occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally as they're needed, we've done some here and there over the years, but it's not part of the regular board calendar.
Yeah.
And those are the moments like our retreat, and sometimes we've got work sessions where we can be more spontaneous, have more informal conversation.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that I'm understanding that when we say special ed kids, we mean kids receiving special education services.
Yeah, we assume. But is every kid identified? Don't get me started, I'll go off on special education. But yes, kids that are identified. Any other frictions that are showing up here? Okay, let's see. So then, I mean, my next question and prompt question for us is, what adjustments does this suggest and what's missing here? What does this capture? Maybe we need to sit with them. What didn't we get?
Means we could work to incorporate the elements that we're missing, like give time and space for individual expression, give time for spontaneous and expansiveness. Knowing that we go in the other direction on the top graph there, maybe be more intentional about advocacy.
I think I still think about time, right? And how many of us are new, you know, and still figuring out, when can we do, you know, these other things, right? And so for now, just kind of like just trying to figure it out, really. You know, and so I think it's important in the beginning of anything to have a structure where like you're learning and, you know, there's a particular way of doing something, right? And then you are also within that, like trying to figure out who you are within that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finding your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, you know, new members, you're still in that state. Absolutely.
I appreciate that we are a goal-driven, stewardship-oriented organization, and that we're structured and that we collaborate as a group. Those are great things for accomplishing things. But, and I wouldn't feel like it's that the way we've organized it for us newbies, it's really nice to kind of go, this is how it's supposed to flow. And then, I did feel like at the retreat, there was a little more space for individual and spontaneous, all of those other things. But I do not want to lose the fact that we can have efficient meetings and effective meetings being structured the way we are.
Absolutely.
I agree, and I can, and I can see where some more spontaneity would be valuable. I tend to err on the goal-driven, structured format. I'm very much that way, and so I can get too caught up in this quadrant, over here, and but thankfully, hearing Miriam bring up that we've got some things that we probably need to address, or that somewhere there's some underlying frictions. And we have structured ourselves in a way that is very goal driven and structured, I guess is just really the best word, that we're not providing the space for those conversations to happen. And it is eventually going to catch up with us if we don't. Because I can already feel a shift in the tone of the room, that there's some underlying something that we've not discussed or that we've not gotten out. And I don't want that, because it's only going to keep getting worse. So it's a good reminder for someone who lives over on the far right in this quadrant that over on the left is going to be valuable too. It needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I guess coming this far in this year, thing that really came to my attention quickly is when we're in a board meeting, we are under a microscope.
For sure.
Be really careful what gets said and how it's said. And so I found myself really, and I think a good way, self-aware that way, and where's the space for, spontaneity is the right word, but wondering and imagination and questions. And that's work session stuff, I'm guessing, but that's public meeting too, right?
It's so public. Yeah, it's getting used to that everything that we say is recorded. I mean, and potentially being watched by somebody on YouTube as we speak. And I think that makes us guarded, and we don't want to have those conversations. And when I've worked with board members that have been on the board a long time, that's been the hardest thing for them to get used to, is having a retreat where they could lay it all out on the table, because nobody ever goes to a retreat. Members of the public never would go and watch that whole 9 to 4 all day meeting thing. And so those conversations could happen. They weren't recorded. And then now moving to that period where there's a lot of public accountability, and we've got to figure out how to navigate that.
I want to be mindful of the board's time. I'm hearing wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. Is this an area where the board would like to explore further? How to do this? Be more spontaneous, expansive, but in a way that's productive, getting more out of your meetings. How there's some really good research around how boards meet and how they function that I think could be really useful. We didn't get to touch on that tonight, but there's useful learning here that might be able to take you into meeting spaces that you haven't been utilizing, that are available to you. Is there some interest there? I'm seeing nodding heads. I see Miriam's brow furrowed.
I'm just thinking, because I don't know if this is a board issue, it might be an individual issue. When it comes to how to behave in a setting like this, and how people's actions and words impact the dynamic of the board as a whole. So that's what I mean. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and I'm just thinking.
But when we imagine equitable and inclusive governance, I mean, we have to think about how we're showing up in the space. So that's part of this conversation. But we can talk about that for sure.
I think sometimes,
How we land.
and I feel like, and this is what I do sometimes in other boards that I'm part of, is we start off with rules and expectations when conducting a board meeting.
Yeah,
And that there has to be respect, and that you might not agree with someone's opinion or what they have to say, but at least to listen to what they're saying and not contradict or fight or try to prove your point or make the other person feel bad. But I just don't know how to implement that into a governmental setting, because that is in a nonprofit world. This is definitely completely different. So how can we set those expectations about how to conduct yourself in a setting like this? Because it's supposed to be obvious, but obviously it's not. So what do we need to put? Have a rules and expectations of how to conduct a board meeting, at the beginning of each time, and have everyone agree, because that's what we would do in my board, right? We would all say, does everybody agree that these are the expectations and the rules moving forward with the meeting? Yeah, okay, we can continue.
if that's what the board wants to do. You
And
can
that's
go
just,
there.
that's what I've seen has worked in the nonprofit world. That's why I'm wondering, it's like, what can we do? That way we can feel comfortable and safe in being able to provide an opinion, right? Because we all have here different personal experiences. We all represent different aspects of our community. But when I don't feel safe, I'm not doing a service to my community.
Check. Yeah, when board members can't show up and be authentic. And that doesn't mean that we can be harmful when we say, but be out their authentic self. It's not just the board that loses, it's not just the organization, it's your kids that are missing out. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that there's agreement that you might move, when you want to move into this space, but I'm hearing some concerns, some anxiety. And so we'll just be really careful. And I think you and I can work on this.
Absolutely. I think from my perspective and hearing all of this, I think, and this evening, we're absolutely, I believe we're on the right track of doing this work with Vince. We're having these conversations because we are in a spot of forming a team and having, like Denise said, like there's a lot of newness and like finding your voice and figuring out, how to have the really productive conversations. And sometimes that means productive conflict. And I think it's the work that we're doing. Good at this.
Okay,
Good night.
thank you for your
Thank you,
trust
Vince.
with that. Yeah. I'm glad that ethics and finance was just all feral monkeys for us. And thank you for this conversation and everybody being authentic. It's really helpful. I look forward to walking with you in this space.
Yeah.
I yield back to the chair. It's after time.
Yeah. So the one question that I have for the group is, would it be easiest if we did something similar like we did this last time, where I send out a variety of dates and work with Vince and be able to find our third session with him for this spring? Does that sound good? Okay, perfect.
Okay. And then I wanted to bring something up that I've been meaning to send an email for about the past week, but we've been talking about development as a board, and so it's it makes sense with what we've been talking about. And we've been talking about, we've had a continuing conversation over the last couple of meetings that we've had about board development and like what we want to see happen, and we just kind of had some dialogue. But I feel like we found some cohesiveness on, we want to develop a plan for board development and goals. And Jason talked about putting together a group of 3 board members to specifically work on that. And so what I need to do is, my intention is to have people reach out to me. So I'm also gonna send an email with this. But I just want you guys to start to think about it, if that's something that you'd be interested in participating in that group of 3. Think about that, and then I will, cause we're missing a member tonight, I will definitely reach out via email. And then you guys can respond to me, and then we'll go from there, depending on the interest of like who is interested in being in that group, so. Alrighty, and so, just to finish this off tonight, I'm just gonna mention important dates coming up. So March 10th, we have our next scheduled board meeting a week from today on March 10th. And then after that, we actually, and I did talk about this a little bit at our last board meeting, but we have our open house. So it's the ESD open house, but it's also a special education resource fair, where we have demonstrations of a lot of our services, but then we also have other organizations, community organizations, special ed services, that will be there. So it's a really cool thing as a board member to come check out. But anyway, that is Tuesday, April 7th from 5 to 7 at the building. And then the next one's just our next April 21st board meeting. And that is it.
Quick question.
Thanks. Yes.
Quick question. For the open house, are we limited in terms of how many board members can
No.
actually show up? No.
No, because we're not actually, there's no board
It's not a meeting.
decision or discussion, so
Oh.
as many board members come.
Yeah. Good question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is that excellent?
Yeah, we can all come if we want, and it's super cool. I brought my kid last year and we both had a lot of fun, so.